Right, students, I hope everyone can hear me. So we are going to start for the second day of our financial management lesson. Last week we conducted the first day of our financial management lesson, and today we are going to conduct the second day. And those who could not participate for the previous session, you have to watch it before you continue with this second session. Clear lamai? So first session එක පුතා බලලා නැත්තම්, first of all you have to go to our uh, links and search where you can find the first day session, and first of all you have to complete that, otherwise you will not be able to understand the second day what we are doing today. Understood the right? Okay, so last week I hope you can remember we started discussing financial management, which is one of the important lessons in your syllabus. Right. So I hope all you can remember. During the last session, I told you we are dividing this entire lesson into three parts. අපි last session එකේ පුතා කියලා දුන්නා මේ lesson එක මම උගන්වන්නේ parts තුනකට, because there are three major parts you have to complete in this lesson when it's come to financial management. Right? Okay. The first part, just recalling your memories, the first part, it's almost like an introduction part, and this is where this is what we started and we are still continuing. This is what we are now doing as well. එතකොට මේක තමයි ළම අපි ගිය සතිය පටන් ගත්තේ මෙතනින්. ක්ලියර්ද? එතකොට මේකේ තමයි පුතා මෙතනදී financial management definition. Clear? Thereafter, the major decisions of financial management. I hope you can remember the financing decisions and investing decisions. So those two were the two decisions we learned last week, the most important decisions we are taking in when it's come to financial management. At the same time, the objectives or the aims of financial management, that is what we learned, another part what we learned under the same part. Clear? Thereafter we learned what you mean by budgeting and cash flows, right? Still we are learning this part, still we have not completed this part, and the second part what we are going to do is the financial analysis, or we call this as ratio analysis, or the financial statement analysis. All these words refers the same. Clear? Right. And the third part is what you know as the financial system. These are the three parts we have to cover when it's come to financial management. That is what I taught you last week. Clear? Still we are conducting this part, and we are doing this second day session to complete another remaining part which is also belongs to the first part. Clear? අපි අත පුතා second part එක කරන්නේ නැහැ. Second part will be conducted in another next week most probably. But today we are doing another remaining part. So far these parts have been discussed. ළමයි අපි මේ parts ටික අපි discuss කරලා තියෙන්නේ last session එකේ. එතකොට මේකේ පුතා තව remaining part එකක් තියෙනවා, fund requirements and the investments කියලා. Clear? So that is what we are going to discuss today. And still we are discussing the same first part. At the same time, we are going to finish this part today itself. Other main part එකක් කතා කරලා ඉවරුණා කියලා කියන්නේ පුතා එතනින් ඉවරයි. වාගේ first part එක. එතකොට අපිට second day ඊළඟ day එකේදී we are discussing within one session we are going to discuss the financial analysis or the financial report analysis, Ratio analysis, that is what we are commonly calling this as. And thereafter financial systems. Thereafter your entire lesson is over. Clearly lama right now. What we are going to do on other the remaining part of our first session, first introduction part. Now I hope you can remember. I hope you can remember what we discussed last week. What do you mean by financial management? What do you mean by financial management? Actually, the financial management here we are doing two things basically. Now financial management කිව්වම දැන් ඔයා last week අපි ඉගෙන ගත්ත හින්දා දන්නවා මේකේ කරන්න පුතා mainly two tasks we are going to do, or we are going to make two decisions. What those two decisions are? Yes, we have to decide how to obtain funds. And also we have to decide how to invest these funds. This is what you typically mean by meaning about financial management. Financial management always doing two things. What those two things are? Obtaining funds from most appropriate sources. උත්තම ක්‍රමවලට පුතා funds ටික collect කරගන්න ඕනේ. ඊට පස්සේ you have to decide how you are going to invest these funds for the productively or efficiently into your business activities. That is what you know as investing funds. So this is what we call මෙන්න මේකට තමයි පුතා අපි කිය financing decisions. Financing decisions. Clear? This is what you mean by investing decisions. That is what we discussed last week. I hope you can remember. Last week there are two main decisions taken in when it's come to financial management. What those two decisions are? Financing decisions and the investing decisions. So this is what we discussed. We are going to talk another part which is almost relevant to these two parts. Clear? So I will අර මම කිව්වලා පොඩ්ඩක් විතරලා මේ lesson එක හරියට map කරලා ඉගෙනුවේ නැත්තම් ඔයාට ඔක තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. Clear? ඒකට මේ lesson එක අමාරු නෑ. This is not one of the difficult lesson to understand. මේක ලේසිලම අත්තර තේරුම් ගන්න. The problem is the way we are teaching you. Understood? So we have to have a kind of a very smooth flow. දැන් මම මේකට හදාගෙන තියෙන පුතා හොඳ smooth flow එකක් මෙන්න මෙහෙම ඉගෙනුවොත් ඔයාලට මේක තේරෙනවායි කියලා. So that is what I am following now. Clear? So other than that, because even when we are referring to our teaching guide එක බැලුවත් පුතා we have been given so many concepts to teach you. But there is no any particular way of teaching, or sometimes these concepts are not appropriate to teach you where they have instruct to teach us. So that is what we are learning. That is why what I am teaching you now. Teach make understand කරගන්න ලේසි වෙන විදියට. Clear? ඒතර මේ පාස් ටික okay නේද? First session එක බලන්න ළමයි. Those who have not watch the first session, you have to watch the first session, right? ළමයි මේ බලන්න මේක understand කරගන්න. Now we are stepping to the today's part. දැන් ළමයි මේ මම පරණ ටික මතක් කරා. දැන් පොඩ්ඩක් ඔන්න අපි step කරනවා what we are going to do today, right? Okay, look at this one. Forget about this part and focus on the upper part, which is what you know as obtaining funds or financing decisions. Here, lamai, if you want to now, why we want to obtain funds? Why we want to obtain funds? Funds obtain කරන්න. First of all, in order to obtain funds, what we need to have first? මුලින් මොකද්ද තියෙන්න ඕනේ? ඔයාට බඩගිනි නම් විතරයි නේද ළමයි ඔයා කන්නේ. දැන් මේ තියෙන්නේ තමයි මේවා කෑම හොයාගන්න ක්‍රම කියලා හිතා ගන්නකො. These are the ways you can find food. But why you are trying to find food, and when you are what is the situation you are trying to find food is whenever you have the hunger. ඔයාට බඩගින්න තියෙන වෙලාවටනේ පුතා හොයන්නේ නේද? Similar to that, obtaining funds always we are whenever we are having a when we are trying to obtain some funds, first of all we need to have fund requirement. Fund requirement. Clear? Actually, we learn this part first. But exactly, this is what we have to learn first. Clear? But anyway, since we want to teach you in a what do you call it? In a way you can understand. We taught you this one first, but anyway you have to now understand. நம்ம දැන් තේරෙන්න ඕනේ why we are obtaining funds. අපි obtain කරන්නේ ඇයි ළමයි funds obtain කරන්නේ? Why we are making financing decisions? Why we are looking what are the ways we can collect the funds and try to obtain the funds from those sources whenever we have what? This one. This is the problem we are always facing. When එක තමයි problem එක. මේක තමයි solution එක. Clear? So solution we learn first. Now we are going to today අපි ඉගෙන ගන්න යන්නේ මොකද්ද? මෙන්න මේ problem එක. What is the fund requirements an organization can have? ඔන්න ඔය part එක ඉගෙන ගන්න යන්නේ. Clear? So ඒක join වෙන්නේ how it's going to join with the part you have learned already. Can you understand? Clear? මේ part එක අපි ඉගෙන ගත්ත last week. Clear? Now why we are obtaining funds? Because whenever we have a fund requirement, this is what we are going to learn today. එහෙනම් understood නේද? එහෙනම් topic එක ලියා ගන්න ළමයි අද requirement අද topic එක තමයි yes fund requirement. Fund requirement. Fund requirement. Fund requirement. Fund requirement. Of businesses. Of businesses. Fund requirements of businesses. Clearly now understood, right? Okay, now this is what we are going to discuss today. Okay, right, good. Now when it's come to fund requirements of a business, we can classify this requirement based on the term or based on the time. We can classify this requirement into two categories. Clear, Ramai? Fund requirement taker. Now, whenever we have a fund requirement only, we are trying to obtain funds. Clear, right? Now, the fund requirement a business can have could be in two ways or two types. So, what they are? Ramai, මොනවද මේ fund requirement එකේ types දෙක? Look at this one. One thing could be, it could be short-term fund requirements. One, it could be short-term fund requirement. ඉතින් ළමයි you can understand very simple. If one part is short-term, then the other part definitely should be what? Long-term. නේ එන අනිත් එක long-term. Long-term fund requirement. Long-term fund requirement. Clear, Is that all right? Right, okay. So we are going to learn what you mean by this short-term fund requirements and long-term fund requirements. This is what we are going to discuss today. Look at this one. The short-term fund requirement is also known as, this is also known as working capital. Working capital fund requirement, or just you can say working capital requirement. Working capital requirement කියලා කියන්නේ පුතා ඕක තමයි. Requirement. Working capital requirement. Right, working capital requirement. And this is also known as මේකට කියනවා ළමයි මොකක් කියලාද? Fixed capital requirement කියලා. Fixed capital requirement. Is that all right? Then let me know. ටක් ගාලා ළමයි. විනාඩි තප්පරයක් යන්නේ මේක කියන්න. Let me know. Fund requirements. When it's come to fund requirements of an organization or a business, how many types of fund requirements we have? We have two types of fund requirements. What they are? Short-term fund requirements and long-term fund requirements. What do you mean by short-term fund requirements? I will teach you. What do you mean by long-term fund requirements? I will teach you. Don't worry. But let me know what are the alternative terms we can use for that. Short-term fund requirements are also known as working capital requirement. Long-term funds always are another word we can use for long-term fund requirement is what you call as fixed capital requirement. Is that understood? ඔය terms ටික මතක තියෙන්න ඕන. Now then මම explain කරන්න යනවා. What do you mean by short term and long term? But before that, shall we have the topic and have this part? Note එක දාගමු. You have to have the notes with you. Even last session we started having our own notes because you have to maintain the notes, right? Okay, now have the topic fund requirements of a business. Fund requirement of a business. That is the main topic you need to have. Fund requirements of a business, right? Quickly. Fund requirements of a business. So you can take down this. The fund requirements of, you can start as a paragraph and continue, right? The fund requirements of a business, the fund requirements of a business, the fund requirements of a business can be categorized into, can be categorized into two categories. Two categories can be categorized into two categories. Like, and those who are on live if you can have a screenshot, that is also fine. So you can complete your notes whenever you have a time. The problem is most of the students do not have a time. හරි ගොඩක් කටේ වෙලාව නැති ප්‍රශ්න ආයේ තියෙන්නේ. අනිත ඔක්කොට වැඩ වලට වෙලාව තියෙනවා. note එක complete කරන් තමයි students they cannot find a time, right? All other matters they have good enough time to find, right? Okay, ටක් ගාලා එහෙම busy කට්ටිය ඉන්නවා නම් can have a screenshot. You will find at least a time even after the exam එක පස්සේ time එකක් හම්බ වෙයි. එහෙනම් මේක complete කරගන්න එහෙම කරමු. හරි, right? Okay, ටක් ගාලා අඳගන්න. අඳින කට්ටිය ටක් ගාලා අඳගන්න. We are not going to spend much time on this. We are quickly finishing everything. The part එක ඉවර කරනවා ටක් ගාලා මම. Clear? Right. Okay, good. Then first of all we'll have the topic. එනනම් ළම explain කරගන්න යන්නේ මොකද්ද? දැන් ඔයාම දන්නවා. Yes, first of all we have to know what you mean by short term fund requirements. So put the number one if you want, put number one, or just write the topic short term fund requirements. What is the alternative words we are using, ළමයි? At the class itself you have to finish everything and put them into your mind. There's no any other time you will be able to find in future to study these things one by one. මේක ළමයි one by one පාඩම් කරගෙන ඉන්න දෙයක් නෑ. Financial management මේ lesson එක ළමයි එවෙලෙම ඔයාගේ ඔළුවට දාගන්න පුළුවන් superb lesson එකක්. And I am teaching you in a way you can do it. මම ඔයාලට ඒක කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන විදිහට ඔයාලට උගන්වනවා. අර ඒ ගානට ෆ්ලෝ එකක් හදලා දුන්නා ලස්සනට ලාස්ට් week අපි මේ part එක කතා කරා. අද දැන් මේ parts ටික තුරා ඒ විදිහටම deposit කරගන්න mind to the mind at the class itself, so you don't need to find any other additional times to study these things again and again. Clear the right? Enough short term fund requirement. මොකද alternative word එක working capital requirement. Now this is what you mean by මේකෙන් කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? The meaning of this is, now you know, whenever we are running a business, we want to have some money on hand. සල්ලි අතේ තියෙන්න ඕනේ නේද පුතා දැන් බිස්නස් එක කරගෙන යනකොට. For what? For our day to day operations. Day to day. This is the most important word you have to know. Day to day. මෙන්න මෙතන තමයි පුතා term එක තියෙන්නේ. Day to day. So things are the fund requirements for your day-to-day business activities. Clear? Then whenever you are running a business, there are some day-to-day things you have to do. You have to perform some kinds of activities are there. Those are the activities you have to perform in your day-to-day business life to run the business smoothly. Now, for an example, let's say you are running a restaurant. Let's say you are running a restaurant. And whenever you are running a restaurant, you know, every day you have to purchase the ingredients or whatever the food items which are required to prepare the food. Clear? Those are what you call as the kind of stocks when it's come to a restaurant. Restaurant stock right in a stock requirement to purchase stocks. To purchase stock. Clear? Right, to purchase stock. Then again, you know, whenever you are running the business, you have to make the payments for the bills. You are getting all these bills නේ ළමයි පුතා bill එනවනේ දන්නවනේ business එක කරන්න පටන් ගත්ත වෙලාව එනවා උදේ ඉඳන් ඇඳ එනවා bills එනවනේ. The electricity bills you will get, the telephone bill you will get, the water supply bill you will get. Also you have to pay for the rent for the building in which you are running the business. Rent එක ගෙවන්න ඕනේ. At the same time there are some kinds of payments you have to pay for your employees. Those are the salaries. Clear? So these kinds of එතකොට පුතා මෙන්න මේ වගේ utility payments. Utility payments. Those are what you call as electricity payments or the water bills, those things. At the same time, salaries, salary, and also you have to pay for your creditors. So these are kind of things. These are kinds of things you may have to do in your day-to-day business activities. So you need to have some funds or cash or money to fulfill these kinds of things. එහෙනම් පුතා මෙන්න මේ වගේ දේවල් ඔයාට day-to-day business operation එකේදී තියනවද නැද්ද? Yes, you have. In order to complete these things, to purchase the stocks, to pay the utility bills, to pay for the creditors, and to pay for the salaries, to pay for the employees, these kinds of things are the day-to-day things you have to do. And the funds you need to have for these kinds of things is what you known as short-term fund requirements. මෙන්න මේවට ඕන කරන සල්ලි වලට මම අපි කියනවා මොනවද කියලාද? Short-term fund requirements, or අපේ technical word එක මොකක්ද? What is the technical word we are using for that is working capital requirements. So always, එහෙනම් පුතා very simple. Short-term fund requirements or the working capital requirements means the fund requirements for our what activities, what business activities, day-to-day business activities. This is the term you have to remember. මෙච්චරයි word එක. මේ term එක මතකයි කරලා මේක define කරගන්න බැරි නෑ. Clear? So things or the kind of funds you require for your day-to-day business activities are known as short-term fund requirements, and or we call this as the working capital requirement. Is that understood? Right? Okay. In our first one, short-term fund requirements or working capital requirement. Right, I believe. Short-term financial short-term financial requirements are short-term financial requirements කියලාත් කියනවා පුතා fund requirements කියලාත් කියනවා working capital requirements කියලාත් කියනවා all three words same. ඒතර මම ඒ තැන්වලදී පුතා ඔයාලට දාන්නේ එතකොට ඔයාලට understand කරගන්න ලේසි. Short-term financial requirements are short-term financial requirements are the fund required the funds required for day-to-day business activities. The fund required for day-to-day business activities. The fund required for day-to-day business activities. Day-to-day business activities. Day-to-day business activities. Clear, Dilama? Understood the right examples. To purchase stocks. To purchase stocks. To purchase stocks. To purchase stocks. Second example. To pay the electricity bills. To pay the electricity bills, comma, water bills, or any other utility bills, to pay electricity bills or electricity charges, water charges, or any other utility bills or any other utility charges. That's all right. Clear. Then another one, to pay salaries. To pay salaries. To pay salaries. To pay salaries. Right. Okay, my good news. Right. Is that all right? Understood the right? What do you mean by short-term fund requirement? The fund required for our day-to-day business activities. Clear, my. නිකන් අර එදාට business එක කරන්න පොඩ්ඩක් නිකන් මෙහෙම හිතන්නකෝ. Just think a scenario like this. Now, can you run the business if you don't have a considerable amount of money in your drawer? If you do not have enough money to run your business, will you be able to open the shop and run the business? Very difficult, because you need to have at least a kind of amount of money to run the business. Then customer කෙනෙක් ඇවිල්ලා පුතා ආට payment එකක් දුන්නට පස්සේ ඒකේ balance එක දෙන්න හරි වාගේ cash තියෙන්න ඕනේ නේ, kind of නේ. At the same time වා දැන් කවුරු ඊළඟට වාගේ supply කෙනෙක් ඇවිල්ලා payment එක ඉල්ලුවාම වාට ඒකට check එකක් issue කරන්න නම් there should be some amount of money in your current account නේ. So that is the requirement, that is the fund requirement you need to have for your day-to-day business activities. This is what you know as short-term fund requirements or working capital requirement. Then now නියමිත තේරුණා. හරිනේ? Right. Long-term fund requirements කියන්නේ මොනවද ළමයි? Long-term fund requirements are we call what is the alternative word we are using? Fixed capital requirement. What do you mean by that? Now you know whenever we are starting a business, sometimes maybe for the explanation purpose. Yes. Now it can be whenever you are starting a new business, or as when you are continuing your business, you know you have to buy non-current assets. Non-current assets. You have to purchase non-current assets. You know what you mean by non-current assets are? Non-current assets are the assets which will have a long-term life, which will give you a long-term benefits or long-term economic benefits. Why? Because you have most of you have done accounting. You know what you mean by non-current asset. Whenever you are starting a business, don't you have to buy non-current assets? You have to buy. At the same time, when you are continuing the business, don't you have to buy non-current assets? Yes, you have to buy non-current assets. For an example, let's say now you are continuing your business, you just have one lorry to do your entire distribution path. ආගේ මුළු distribution එකම පුතා කරන්නේ one you just having a one lorry. But let's say you want to have some more 10 or 15 lorries to buy. Clear? Now you may require kind of funds to purchase these kinds of non-current asset. That is the fund requirement we are calling as the fixed capital requirement or long-term fund requirement. Clear the Buddha? So long-term fund requirement එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? පාට non-current assets purchase කරන්න ඕන කරන සල්ලි. Day to day business එක run කරන්න ඕන කරන සල්ලි වලට මොනවද කියන්නේ? Working capital requirement එක කියලා කියන්නේ. Clear ළමයි? අන්න fund requirement එක අපි topic එක මොකද්ද ළමයි? Topic එක මොකද්ද? නේ? Topic එක මොකද්ද? Yes, topic එක what do you mean? What is our topic? Yes, what is the topic? මේ තියෙන fund requirement. එහෙනම් fund requirement එකේ types දෙක මොනවද? Long term fund එකයි short term fund requirement එකයි. Short term fund requirement means what? It is the yes, day-to-day requirement or the day-to-day required funds for to run the business. And the long-term fund requirements are what? This is what we learned just now. To purchase the fund requirement or the required funds to purchase what? Non-current assets. Are we going to purchase non-current assets in daily basis? හැමදාම ගන්නවද? නැහැ. හැමදාම ලොරියක් ගන්නවද? නැහැ. හැමදාම බිල්ඩින් එකක් ගන්නවද? නැහැ. හැමදාම බිල්ඩින් එකක් හදනවද? හැමදාම ලෑන්ඩ් එකක් ගන්නවද? නැහැ. Clearද? So this is once we do one time, it will give you a kind of benefits for a long term. අද ලොරියක් ගත්තොත් පුතා, it will generate you economic benefits for a long time. If you purchase a building or if you build a building for your business purposes, it will generate you economic benefits for a long period of time. So that's why we are not taking this as day-to-day activity. Day-to-day why it is not categorizing as a day-to-day? Now some may think, so you think, okay, day-to-day tamai. No, it's not day-to-day. Why? Are we going to do these kinds of things every day? No. We're just doing a kind of a once in a period. Clear? And once we do it, it will generate you long-term benefits. Clear? But is that the scenario? Is that the scene we discussed when it's come to working capital? No, working capital means we have to do these kinds of things in our day-to-day business activities. Day-to-day කරන්න. එදිනෙදා එදාට කරන්න මේ වැඩේ. That is what you mean by working capital requirement. This is you are doing once in a time. Once in a time. Clear? Clear? Therefore, this is what you mean by the long-term fund requirement, or we call this as the working capital, fixed capital requirement. Is that understood? So the fixed capital requirement simply, my definition is very simple, more simple definition. Yes, it says it is what you call as the fund requirements to purchase what? Non-current assets. This is fund requirements for day-to-day business activities. Very simple. Topic okay, you first of all you have to have the topic. Long-term fund requirements. Long-term fund requirements. Second type. Now, since this is the second type, because on the top we wrote there are two kinds of fund requirements in a business scale. If you want, you can have the number 2 and write long-term fund requirements. You have to write the alternative term in the brackets. What is the alternative term? Fixed capital requirements can be tested either way. clear the words වලින් ඕන එකක් ළමයි ඔයාගේ exam එකේ තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. Alternative words I'm telling you always from the first day onwards. හැමදාම ළමයි BS lessons පටන් ගත්ත දවසේ ඉඳන්ම මම කිව්වා alternative terms, learn the alternative terms because whenever the examiner wants to make you into a trouble, they are always using what? Alternative terms. You know the answer, but since you did not understand the alternative term, you won't be able to write the answer. Okay, ප්‍රශ්නේ හැමදාම මම මගේ sessions වල මම කිව්වා. Clearද? හරි. Alternative term එක ඉගෙන ගන්න. Right ළමයි ලියමු කොහොමද ලියන්නේ ළමයි? You can have the definition of you just can write the definition by yourself නේ. කොහොමද ලියන්නේ? Fund requirements to purchase non-current assets. Fund requirements for purchasing non-current assets or fund requirements to purchase non-current assets. Non-current assets. Non-current assets. Non-current assets. Right. Examples leave lamai. Now yes, I will first write the examples. Yes, we'll have the examples first. Examples. To purchase land or a building. To purchase land or a building. To purchase land or a building. To purchase motor vehicles. To purchase motor vehicle. To purchase machinery items. To purchase machinery items. To purchase machinery items. What else? Purchase furniture. Yes, that's all. Enough non-current assets means what? Right. Put a star mark and write. Put a star mark and write. Star mark can once you done the examples, put a star mark and write. Long-term fund requirements can arise. Long-term fund requirements can arise. Long-term fund requirements can arise at the beginning of the business, can arise at the beginning of the business, as well as when running or continuing the existing business. Long-term fund requirements can arise at the beginning of the business. Business එක පටන් ගන්නකොටම පුතා එන්නත් පුළුවන්. ඒක තමයි කියන්නේ. At the beginning of the business, as well as running or continuing the existing business. Running or continuing the existing business. It can happen either way. Long-term fund requirement business at the same time, when you are continuing or running the business, when you are expanding the business, in all situations it can happen. Right? Okay, then right, simple marvel easy make understood fund requirements. What are the two fund requirements? Short-term fund requirement, long-term fund requirement. Clear the short-term fund requirement, what you call as day-to-day activities, the fund required for our day-to-day business activities. This is what you mean by the fund required to purchase what? Non-current assets. Clear the right down. Now I think we have discussed these two parts, but I want you to give some further understanding about this working capital, or this is what you known as, this is what you call as is what you call as the short-term fund requirements, we call this as working capital requirements. I want to give you further knowledge regarding this because there can be some more questions based on this. Because this part is a kind of a critical part which can be tested at your exam, right? Okay. Now, when it's come to working capital requirement, it can be two kinds of working capital requirements, but that is not much thing you have to learn, but just we will have a knowledge regarding that. There are two types of working capital. That is what you known as gross working capital and gross working capital. Capital. Do not write anything. So wait for a while. Just listen. That's all right. That's all what I'm expecting. Clear? Right. Second type पे का make net working capital. The working capital लेके पुता types देखा the types देखा net gross working capital लेका net working capital लेका. What do you mean by gross working capital? Gross working capital is the total value of all current assets. මේක ළමයි calculate කරන්න කොහොමද? All current asset value, this is what you call as gross working capital. Clear? Once you deduct your current liabilities from your current assets, once you deduct your current liabilities from your current assets, this is what you mean by net working capital. Clear lamina on a concept the product nikan just learn, because there can be some kinds of questions. I don't think that will be tested, but anyway better to learn and leave. Ne api ඉගෙන ගෙන යන එක හොඳයි ඒක. එහෙනම් ලියපුවා පොඩ්ඩක් ආයෙ topic එකක් ගන්න. You have to take a topic. නිකන් අපි නිකන් පොඩි නිකන් එතන දාගමු මෙහෙම. Working capital, further about working capital requirement. Further about working capital. කියලා ලියමුකෝ. Right. Note එක හදාගමු මේ විදිහටනේ. හරි නේද? දැන් මේ දෙක අපි explain කරගත්තා. Thereafter you have to have another small topic further about working capital. Right. එතන ලියන්න ඕනේ තමයි there are two kinds of working capital. There are two kinds of working capital. First one, gross working capital. Put a dash and say, put a dash එකක් දාලා ලියන්න. The total value of current assets, the total value of current assets is the gross working capital. The total value of current assets, all current assets, is the gross working capital. Right. Put in the second one, number two, net working capital. Number two, net working capital. Right. Put a dash and say the difference between current assets and current liabilities. The difference between current assets and current liabilities. Is the net working capital. The difference between current assets and current liabilities is the net working capital. Okay, so better to learn those 2 points as well. Just have an idea about these two concepts, right? Okay, right. Now, then පුතා අපි මේ working capital ගැන තා පොඩ්ඩක් කතා කරන්න යන්නේ. Yes. Now I am going to discuss about what are the factors factors influencing factors influencing in deciding the working capital requirement. Factors influencing in deciding working capital requirement. Clear? What factors? දැන් පුතා ඔය topic එක ඔයාලට තේරුම් නැත්නම් මෙන්න මේකයි ඔගේ meaning එක නේ. Now what do you mean by working capital requirement? The fund required for our what activities? Day-to-day business activities. The fund required for our day-to-day business activities. That is what you mean by working capital requirement. Now look at this scenario. Let's say there are two businesses. Let's say there are two businesses known as A and B. Now both of these businesses, they have to have some funds for their day-to-day business activities. That is what you mean by working capital requirement. Working capital. So both of these two businesses have the same. Clear? But what my question is, some businesses may need this much of working capital, but some businesses may need only this much of working capital. සමහර businesses වල පුතා මේ හිතන්නකො මෙහෙම ඒගොල්ලෝගේ day to day business activities ටික කරගෙන යන fund එක පොඩ්ඩක් ඒ required fund එක චුට්ටක් තිබ්බම ඇති. පොඩ්ඩයි ඕනේ. But some businesses may need a large amount of funds to carry on their day-to-day business activities. Clear? So my topic is, though, what we are going to discuss now is what factors can influence for the difference of these two requirements. මේ requirement එක බලලා මේ වගේ difference වෙන්න මොනවද influence කරන factors ටික. මොනවද පුතා influence කරන factors? ඒක තමයි දැන් මේ කතා කරන්න යන්නේ. Clear? exam එකේ අහන්න පුළුවන් area එකක්. Clear? Right. මොනවද ළමයි එහෙම එන්න පුළුවන් ඒවා? Clear? First thing is the nature of the business. Nature of the business. Isn't that correct? එහෙම නැද්ද? For an example, I may හිතන්නකෝ. Now, there are two businesses. One business is a retail business. You know what you mean by retail businesses, because we had learned retail businesses when we are discussing the 11th lesson in your syllabus. Where we are trading retail business, the businesses which are selling the goods for the final customer or for the final consumption is what you call as retail business. Retail business clear, right? And one business is that, and other business is, let's say it's a tuition class. Clear? And also let's say that tuition class or the tuition sir or the tuition, we'll assume this is a tuition class, and they are conducting only online classes. Now you know both of these businesses need to have some funds for their day-to-day business activities. That is what you call as working capital requirement. Right? But you know lamai, who requires more working capital and who requires less working capital? Definitely the tuition business who is running their classes online, or they are just doing virtually. Virtual business online business නේ පුතා. ඒතර ඒකේ පුතා මොකක් හරි ලොකු requirement එකක් තියෙන පුළුවන්ද බෑ. තියෙනවා. But anyway, compared to that, the retail business, it does not have much compared to the retail business. Retail business, yes, they need to have, because they want to buy stock. First thing. ඒගොල්ලෝ ළමයි ලොකු ස්ටොක් එකක් ගන්න වෙන්නේ ආනේ. let's say වාගේ ගෙවල් ළඟ තියෙන කඩේ ගැන පොඩ්ඩක් හිතන්නකෝ. how think about the quantity of stocks they have in their stores. Yes. So for that purpose they need to have much more funds for their day-to-day activities. And also, it now. They have to, there are some helpers or assistant in the shop to work, they, you have to pay the salaries for them as well. You have, if the building is not belongs to you or the owner, then you have to make a rental payment as well. You have to pay for the electricity, you have to pay for the telephone charges or telephone bills, or you have to pay the what, water bill charges as well. But think about a online class, how, what they, what do they, what kind of working capital requirement they may have. ඒකට මොකක්ද තියෙන්නේ? First, mainly they have the electricity bill. Clear now. For an example, whenever all these teachers are conducting online classes, one of their own places. නේද? මේ අපි කරන්නේ තමයි අපේ own place නෙවෙයි. නේද? So do we have to pay any rent for that? No, particular rent එකක් එතන නැහැ. The only thing is we may need some funds to print the tutes and post the tutes, as long as we are sending the physical dues. So the requirement එක අඩු. අන්න පුතා nature of the business. Is that understood? ඔයාලා පාඩම් කරන්න එපා. පාඩම් කරන්න නැතුව උඩට දාගන්න. Clear the nature of the business. Clear the, so depend on the nature of the business. Some businesses may need large amount of working capital, and some types of businesses may need small amount of working capital. Is that understood? Right. Clear the right. Another thing we can say, conditions of suppliers. Make a product understand karaganu. Clear then? Right. Let's say our suppliers who supplies the things to us. අපිට ළමයි බඩු දෙන කට්ටිය ඉන්නවනේ. ඒගොල්ලන්ට කියන්නේ කවුද? Suppliers. Yes. Suppliers, let's say if the supplier always asking money, or if they are always asking cash for the asking the payments whenever they are supplying the goods. බඩු දෙනකොටම පුතා payment එක ඉල්ලනවා. And simply මොකද්ද කියන්නේ? Yes, they are not providing any credit facilities. In such situations, lamai, don't we have to keep some funds on our hands to settle those bills day-to-day business activities, in our day-to-day business activities? Yes. But let's say, if these suppliers are willing to provide a credit facilities, could be 60 days or 90 days, do we need to have more funds on our hands? No. අපි ළමයි සල්ලි තියාගන්න අතේ නෑ. ඇයි? අර ක්‍රෙඩිට් දෙනවා. ඉතින් අපිට මොකද තමයි සිම්පල් කරන්න පුළුවන්? Yes, we can sell the stocks, and by using that money we can settle. We don't need to have any additional funds to make the payments for the suppliers. So whenever the suppliers are providing credit facilities, our working capital requirement will go down. But if they are not doing that, and if they are always asking us to settle the payments whenever they are supplying, at the time of supplying by cash, then we need to have some more working capital. Clear, Lama? Is that understood? And second point, conditions of supplies. Understood? The point understand karaganu. Clear that? Just not just writing the point is enough. Have to understand. Then understand karagatot lamai me. පාඩම් කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ නේ. පාඩම් කරන්න නැතුව ඊට ටක් ගාලා උඩ දාගන්න පුළුවන් පොයින්ට් එක. Is that all right? Right. Again, another one. Nature of the stocks. Nature of stock. Nature of stock. Clear, eh? Right now, for an example, let's say that nature of the stock can also influence in deciding your working capital requirement, right? Now, for an example, I think about you are a stationery business. You are just selling stationery. Potti kununawa, the pencils, all these things. Clear? And you can compare this kind of a business with a business which sells electronic items such as laptops, televisions, refrigerators, washing machines. We couldn't business එකක්. So they need to have more funds on their hand because yes, their stock is really expensive. Stock එකේ items පුතා එක item එක හිතන්නකො පුතා මේ අර electronic items විකුණන එක business එකක තියෙන refrigerator එකේ value එක could be the total value of the stock in a the what do you call this stationery business නේ මුළු stationery business එකේම පුතා තියෙන ඔක්කොම books වල value එක සමහරකට 1 million වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Clear? So it can match with two items in the electronic selling business නේ. Electronic business items විකුණන අබාන්සල් business එකක් කියලා හිතන්නකෝ ළමයි. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ අර එක refrigerator එකක් ලක්ෂ 5ක් විතර එනවා. Clear? ඒ වගේ දෙකක් කියලා කියන අරගේ මුළු total stock එක. Understood? So that will also matters when you are deciding the working capital requirement. Clear ළමයි පුතා එකක් තේරුණාද? Point A points understand කරගන්න. Right. Next time the other one possibilities of obtaining credit facilities. The possibilities of obtaining credit facilities. Credit facilities. The possibilities of obtaining credit facilities. There are some businesses they can obtain more credit facilities, but there are some businesses they do not have much opportunities to obtain credit facilities. Depend on that also, you will have to have more working capital or less working capital. Clear? For a business like this, if you are a sole proprietor, then you do not have much opportunities to obtain credit facilities or the loan facilities. Loan facilities loan facilities. Clear? But if you are incorporated company, then you will have more chances to obtain what? Loan facilities. So in that case, it will also decide your working capital requirement. Is that understood? Loan chance you don't need to have more funds on your hand to obtain the working capital. Working capital less chances then you need to have more funds because to run the business smoothly you need to have some funds with you. Clear? Right. Another point that's all. One point. Seasons and demand. Seasons and demand. එකක් තමයි impact එක. Now for an example, you know, let's say you are a textile business, you are just selling apparel items or the garments like Tilakavardhana textiles or fashion bug or whatever the business. Now you know during the normal period, during June, July, August, is that the season they have? No, it's not their season in which they will have more sales. They are having more sales in which seasons? April and December, right? So in those seasons, they may need to have, or they will have a more requirement of working capital due to the huge demand they have and their season. Clear? But for the off season, they do not need to have, or they do not need to maintain much funds for their day-to-day activities. Is that understood? So seasons වලට වැඩිපුර සල්ලි ඕනේ day to day business activities ටික කරගෙන යන්න. Clearද? හැබැයි off season එකේදී එහෙම ඕනේ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. Clearද? That is also one factor which could decide your requirement of working capital. Is that understood? So this can be a question at your exam. හරි. exam එකේ අහන්න පුළුවන්. Okay, right. So shall we move to the next part? Understood nila මේ part එක? Okay, the right. Shall we move quickly? We'll have another topic about working capital. තව පොඩි area එකක් කතා කරනවා working capital වල. Problems or even you can say issues due to lack of working capital. Problems or issues due to lack of working capital, right? Now in this area or in this topic what we are going to discuss, let's say if you are having some kinds of working capital issues, which means for your day-to-day activities, let's assume now for your day-to-day activities you want this amount of money. This is what you call as working capital. But let's say you always have only this much as your working capital. Clear? So there is a deficiency. There's a deficiency of working capital. Now, is that all right? No, Lamai. There may be, or there are some problems you have to face due to this problem. Definitely there are some issues you will have to face because you do not have enough money to carry out your day-to-day business activities, which means you are struggling with your working capital. ස්ට්‍රගල් කරනවා වර්කින් කැපිටල්. දැන් හිතන්න මෙහෙම කියලා ඔයාට සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඉස්කෝලේ ගිහිල්ලා උදේට එළියට බහැලා ඉස්කෝලේ ගිහිල්ලා හවස ක්ලාස් ගිහිල්ලා ඉනින්ගම් බස් එකේ එනවා හවස මොනවා හරි කනවා ආයෙ ඇවිදන් එනකොට මොනවා හරි කනවා ඉනින්ගම හරි ලෝඩ් එකක් දාගෙන එනවා ඔය ටික ඔක්කොම කරගෙන වැඩ ටික කරගෙන ආයෙ හවස ගෙදර එන්න තමයි how much you may need. Yes, let's say if you just have only half of that, will you be struggling? Yes, definitely you will be struggling. Struggle කරනවා නේද ඔයා එක්ක මොකක් කර අරක කරන්න නැතුව මේක කරන්න මේක කරන්න නැතුව අරක කරන්න එහෙම නැද්ද so that's the same situation can apply for the businesses as well. Whenever you are having some kinds of working capital problems, there are some kinds of problems you will have to face. So what those problems are, that is what we are going to talk now. Clear? Right. Problems. First thing is you won't be able, you will have some difficulties of continuing the business. In our first point, you know working capital is very much essential to run your business with completing your day-to-day business activities. Day-to-day business activities complete because you are having a kind of a problem with your working capital. Then the problem is in our first issue first thing interruptions for day-to-day business activities. Interruptions for day-to-day business activities. Interruptions. Again, lamai ara karaganda bärila hira wenawane. Interruptions for day-to-day business activities. That is the main problem you will have. ඔය සමහර shops වල එහෙම තියෙන පුතා ඒ කියන්නේ බඩු ඇත්තට shop එකේ item එක නැහැ. හැබැයි market එකේ available එයා ගෙන්නන්නෙත් නැහැ මොකද? Since he is having kind of a working capital problems. First one, interruption of day-to-day business activities. Then another one, let's say one of your customers came to the business and he is making an order. Yeah, order එකක් දාන customer කෙනෙක් ඇවිල්ලා ආරි මට මේ ටික දෙන්නකෝ හදලා දෙන්නකෝ කියලා is making an order. Sometimes you may not be able to complete this order because since you do not have enough funds to purchase whatever the material or the ingredients you want to complete this order. Then මේ order එක ළමයි වාට complete කරගන්න ඕන බඩු ටික ගන්න සල්ලි නැත්තම් can you complete the order? No. So the next point is struggles or the disturbances අපි ලියමු පුතා disturbances. Obstacles කියන්නත් පුළුවන්. Disturbances are obstacles to complete customer orders. Obstacles are disturbances to complete customer order. Customer orders. Customer orders. Customer orders. Obstacles to complete customer orders. හරිද මම පොයින්ට් එක ලිව්වේ නෑ ළමයි ලියා ගන්න පුළුවන් නේද? Obstacles to complete customer orders. Right. ඉතින් ළමයි මොකද ඔකින් වෙන්නේ? එතකොට දැන් ඔන්න the customer gave the order, right, you accepted. He just paid an advance. But to complete the order, you have to buy some more materials and complete it, but you do not have enough money. Clear the right. So that what could happen? What could happen? Once the customer comes on the delivery day, the item is not ready. So he will scold you. අන්න එයාට ඔයාට බයිනවා දැන්. අයියෝ මේ දැන් දීලා ගිය ඕල්ටර් එක තාම කම්ප්ලීට් කරේ නැද්ද? ඒ වාටින් කියනවා නෑ මේ අයිටම් එක තාම මේ මාකට් එකේ නැහැ. ඒක ඉවර ඇත්තට ඉවර නැහැ. තියෙනවා ඔයාට ගන්න සල්ලි නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ මොනවද? working capital එක නැහැ කියන එක තමයි කියන්නේ. clear ළමයි. එතකොට end of the day what would happen? Yes, the customer will become dissatisfied. එහෙනම් customers will get dissatisfied. Customers will get dissatisfied, or you can just say dissatisfied customers. Creation of dissatisfied customers කියලා කියන්නත් පුළුවන්. Or we'll say අපි කියමු customers will get dissatisfied and that will impact negatively on the goodwill of the business. එතකොට ළමයි අපේ business එකේ goodwill එක මොකද? our good business, the goodwill of the business will tarnish වෙනවා. Customers will get dissatisfied, and as a result of that or whatever, the business goodwill, the business will have negative impact on its goodwill. ඔයගේ meaning එකක් ලියවන්න ඇතියා. There's nothing exact way to write. මම ඔය කියන meaning එක ලියවන්න ඇති ළමයි. point එක ඕනේ. Clear? What else? ළමයි whenever ළමයි let's say clear? Now let's say you have got some order. Now you have to complete, but you do not have required funds to purchase the required materials. What you would do? මොකද කරන්නේ? Definitely you will go and take a short term loan. Short term loan එකක් ගන්නවද? ඔව් ගන්නවා. වෙන කරන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. දැන් order එකක් ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ. ඔයාලට complete කරන්න ඕන කරන material ටික ගන්නවත් ඔයාගේ සල්ලි නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයාලට working capital නැහැ. Enough. You don't have enough working capital. What would you do? Definitely you will go and get a short term loan. So whenever you are getting a short-term loan, you know you have to pay an interest. So that interest would be an additional cost for you. දැන් ළමයි අර ඔයාගාව සල්ලි තිබ්බනම් ඔයාටම පුළුවන් material ටික අරන් ගලා order එක complete කරන්න. Then the profit will you can enjoy it alone. But since you do not have enough money on your hand, you have to get a loan and you have to pay an additional interest for that as well. Definitely your profit you earn from your orders will decrease. Understood නේද? Next point එක තමයි අපි ලියමු ළමයි මොකද්ද? have to incur additional cost. Have to incur additional cost on short-term have to incur on additional cost on short-term borrowings. Short-term borrowings. Clear ළමයි? Is that understood? ඉතින් ළමයි as a whole අපි ඔක්කොම එකට ගත්තොත් as a whole what would happen? The business won't be able to carry out the things as they planned. Plan කලාවා කියලා ළමයි කරගන්න බැරි වෙන එක තමයි අන්තිම result එක. Clear? Then the business plans will become unsuccessful whenever you do not have enough money to carry on your day-to-day business activities. Is that understood? ළමයි තේරුණාද වැඩේ? Right. අපි ලියමු. Final point එක. Business won't be able to carry out their plans as expected. Business won't be able to carry out their plans as expected. Business won't be able to carry out the plans as they expected. And the plans will become unsuccessful. And the plans will become unsuccessful. Plans will become unsuccessful. Plans will become unsuccessful. Right, okay, Gama, is that understood? Clearly, this can also be a question at your exam, right? Next one, one part, we will discuss one more part relevant to working capital and finish it off. Right. එතකොට ළමයි මෙන්න මේ working capital එකේ මේ කෑල්ල කතා කරලා අපි ඉවර කරමු working capital part එක එතන ඉවරයි. Right. Let's say I'm going to discuss some of the ways we can use to increase the working capital availability. Working capital available. Now let's say now the make topic එක product sometimes you may not able to understand at a glance. එකපාර දැක ගමන් ඔකට තේරෙන්නේ නැති වෙයි. මෙහෙමයි ඔය කතාව කියන්නේ. The what I want to mean is now let's say how you can increase the working capital availability. Can then what working capital කියන්නේ මොකක්ද ළමයි? නිකන් simply ඔක simplify කරගෙන යමු පොඩ. Working capital කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? What do you mean by working capital? The fund requirements for our day-to-day things or day-to-day business activities. Clear? How you can increase the availability of more funds on your hand for day-to-day business activities. දැන් වාගේ ඔය අතේ දැන් සල්ලි අතේ තියෙන සල්ලි ටිකනේ පුතා ඔය කියන්නේ day-to-day business වලට තියෙන සල්ලි ටික. ඒක ඒ availability එක වැඩි කරගන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා මේ කතා කරන්නේ. First thing is as long as you can do sales on cash. මේක එක example එකක් කියනකොටම පුතා ඔයාලට තේරෙනවා දැන් මේක. Sales on cash basis. Will it increase your working capital availability? Yes. Why? දැන් ඔයා වෙනමමයි fund එකක් ඕනේද පුතා දැන් ඔයා sales කරන්නේ cash basis නා. නේ what you will always get cash to your drawer or to your bank account. When you are performing all, let's say there are some businesses, they are always doing sales on cash basis on. ගොඩාක් තමයි මේ බාන්නකො නිකන් මේ large quantities විකුණන කට්ටියනේ with a huge discount එක ලොකුවට දෙනවා large quantity විකුණනවා. They are always doing sales on cash basis only. They are not giving any they are not selling any items on credit basis. Credit basis විකුණන්නේ නැහැ. cash basis විතරයි විකුණන්නේ. එහෙනම් ළමයි ඔයාගේ working capital availability එක මොකද වෙන්නේ? increase වෙනවා. නේ එන්න සල්ලි තියෙනවා. ඇති වෙන සල්ලි තියෙනවා තාච්ච වරපුවා. Clear? Is that understood? Now you know අරන් නිකන් හිතන්න ඕවා simple මේ වාගේ day to day life එකේ හම්බෙනවා මේවා. දැන් ඔයා පික් මේකක් දාපුවාම what is the first question that the driver is asking? Whether it's cash or card නේ. cash ද card ද කියලා අහනවා නේද? cash නම් okay, card නම් cancel කරලා. ඇයි? What is the reason behind that? because ළමයි එයා දන්නවා එයාට cash දැන් trip එක ඉවර කරනකොට if it is cash basis sale එකක් නම් ඒතර එයාගේ sale එක cash යන්නේනේ. He will get money at the time of completing the trip. He can use that cash for pumping the fuel. නේ? ඉතින් පෙට්‍රල් ගහගන්න පුළුවන් පුතා අවසට ඒ සල්ලි ටිකකින්. හැබැයි ක්‍රෙඩිට් කාඩ් එකෙන් පේමන්ට් එක කරොත් he will get some 2-3 days or even some it will take a week to get that money to his account. During that time he has to find additional funds to do their day-to-day things. Day-to-day then pick me driver के business එක ගත්තොත් ළමයි pick me driver කියන business එක ගත්තොත් you are just a driver. What is the working capital requirement or what is their day-to-day activities? Yes, the fueling. Fueling තමයි මේ පෙට්‍රල් ගහන එකනේ පුතා day-to-day activity එක යාගේ තියෙන්නේ. Clear? එතකොට ඒක කරගන්න එයාගේ cash availability එක වැඩි වෙනවා මොනවද? Sales cash basis කරොත්. ඒකනේ එයා හැමතිස්සෙම අහන්නේ ඕක ඉතින් අපි මිනිස්සුන්ට බයිනවා තමයි. හැබැයි ළමයි මේකේ ඇත්ත කතාව ඕක. අපි ඉතින් බයිනවනේ ඌට මේ වැඩක් තියනවා දෙයක් ඕ මේ cash ද මේ කාර්ඩ්ද කියලා මේක අහන්න එනවා ඊට පස්සේ කෑ කාඩ් කිව්ව ගමන් මේක කැන්සල් කරනවා ඊට පිය ගිහිල්ලා මේ අපි දානවා Facebook එකේ වෙන්න මුගේ ප්‍රොෆයිල් එකත් එක්ක ස්ක්‍රීන්ෂොට් එකක් ගාලා ඒ වගේ වැඩ එහෙම කරනවා මම දැකලා තියෙනවා but anyway the reason behind this is understood නේද තේරුණා ඒතර එයාට පුතා එදා දවසේ day to day activities ටික කරගන්න පුළුවන් මේ cash එක හම්බුනොත් ඒකයි එයා නැත්තම් එයා additional fund එකක් වෙන කොහෙන් හරි හොයාගන්න වෙනවා. Clear? That is the reason. Clear now? Now first thing is, now topic එක ලියන්න ළමයි ලිව්වේ නැහැ topic එක. ලිව්වද නෑ? ලිව්වද? නෑ ලිව්වේ නෑනේ. Right. First of all we'll have the topic ways to increase the මම මේක short form ලිව්වේ ළමයි ලස්සනට ලියන්න ඕනේ. Ways to increase the working capital availability. Ways to increase the working capital availability. Ways to increase working capital availability. First one, ලියන්න ළමයි. ලියන්න first one. Sales on cash basis or doing sales on cash basis. Doing sales on cash basis. Doing sales on cash basis. Right. Doing sales on cash basis. ළමයි ඊළඟට තව වැඩක් වාට කරන්න පුළුවන්. Let's say there are some people from whom you have to collect money. We call them as what? Debtors. Clear? Debtors. If you can reduce the number of days you have given to debtors to settle the credits. දැන් ඔයාට සල්ලි ගෙවන්න ඉන්න කට්ටියටනේ අපි පුතා debtors කියලා කියන්නේ. ඔයා එයාලට දීලා තියෙනවානේ ළමයි number of days. These are the number of days you have to settle me the payments කියලා. If you can reduce that time period, then you will have more cash on your hand. නේ? ඔයාට සල්ලි හම්බ වෙනවා වැඩි ඉක්මනට. සල්ලි ටික ඉක්මනට හම්බ වෙනවා. Clear? එතමුක let's say you have given them 90 days. Now you are going to reduce this to 30 days. Understood? Then you will have more availability of working capital. Clear? අඩු කරනවා. So එහෙනම් debtor collection period, debtor collection term එක මොකද කරන්නේ? අඩු කරන එක තමයි කරන්නේ. Clear? Clear? ඒතර ඒගොල්ලෝ ටක් ගාලා වර සල්ලි ගෙවනවා. ඔයාලට තමයි ඔයාලට මෙහෙම කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. In another way, you can offer them a what? Discount නේ. Discount එකක් offer කරන්න පුළුවන්. We are in your accounting you are learning නේ discount giving and discount received. So you can give them a discount and ask them to make the settlements early. Clear? So in that case also you will have more cash on your hands, so you will not have any struggles with working capital. Clear නේද? අලම understood නේද? ඒතකොට debtors ළඟ ඉක්මනට collect කරගන්නවා කියන එක point එක තමයි මෙතන තියෙන්නේ. Right. අපි ලියමු next one. Collecting from debtors. Collecting from debtors in advance. 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 ළමයි brackets ඇතුලේ ලියන්න ඕක කරන්න පුළුවන්. There are two ways you can do. One way bracket එක ඇතුලේම ලියමු ළමයි. Further your understanding. offering a discount, or reducing the collection, reducing the collection reducing the collection term, offering a discount or reducing collection term. Offering discounts or reducing collection terms, right? What else, Lama, you can do? If you want to have more availability of working capital, what else you can do? One thing is, Lamai, you can delay some payments. Delay payments. For an example, now end of the day, end of a particular day, you are just having 100,000 on your hand. 100,000 but out of this 100,000, on the same day you have to pay 50,000. Clear? For the rent. Or rent other 50,000. At the same time, you have to pay 100,000 as salary on the same day. Clear? But do you have enough money to do both of these payments today? No, you just have only 100,000. So how can you fill this working capital requirement? Then Kumala working capital requirement manage karagani. Yes, you can. You know the salaries on the salary day. You have somehow you have to pay the salaries on the exact day. හරියට තමයි එදාටම ගෙවන්න වෙනවානේ. salary එක delay කරන්න බෑනේ. Then the employees will come against you. Clear? So what you can do is, without making this payment on the same day, you can skip this payment or delay this payment for next day and make the payment for the seller. එහෙම කරන්න පුළුවන්. Once you do your sales next day, ඊළඟ දවසේ sale එක කරාට පස්සේ කොහොමත් පුතා cash එනවනේ. Then you can settle this one. So that is another way you can have more availability of cash by delaying some payments. Next one, delaying ing form එක දාගන්න. delaying some payments which are not urgent. Delaying some payments which are not urgent. Then you will have more availability for your working capital. One way. Another one is what you call as factoring. This is what you mean by now. For an example, there is a debtor. Then factoring කියන එක explain කරන්න යන්නේ. There's a debtor. Who will pay you, or who is liable to pay you on 31st December? 100,000. Then පුතා මේ debtor ඉන්නවනේ. There's a debtor. Then this debtor is liable to pay us 31st December 100,000. But still we have some another 6 months. අපිට තව මාස 6ක් තියෙනවා මෙයාගෙන් මේ සල්ලි ගන්න. Clear? What we can do is, there are some factoring companies which we have learned about factoring companies when we are discussing the 7th lesson. මතක තියෙනවා 7th lesson එකේ factoring companies කියලා මම definition එකක් දුන්නා. Yes. So that is what they are doing. So you can sell this debtor to a factoring agent or a factoring company. And get a discounted value. මෙයාව විකුණනවා පුතා මෙයාට. ඇත්තටම පුතා මෙයාව නෙවෙයි විකුණන්නේ. What we are selling is what he has mortgaged to us. දැන් මෙයා මේකට පුතා මේ 100,000 වලට අපිට මොකක් හරි mortgage එකක් දීලා ඇතිනේ. Clearද? ඒක අපි sell කරනවා මේ factoring company එකට. With him. Clearද? Then the factoring company will accept this man. හරිද? Then මෙයා කියනවා හරි. 100,000 I will collect 100,000 from him on this exact day and I will give you for that 90,000 but not the 100,000. මෙයා මොකද කරන්නේ? මෙයාගෙන් collect කරගන්නම් කියලා මෙයා accept කරනවා. Clearද? මෙයා තමයි එතකොට collect කරගන්නේ 31st December. කීයක් collect කරගන්නවා? 100,000 collect කරගන්නවා. Clearද? මෙයාට ඒ වෙනුවට දෙනවා අපිට දෙනවා මොනවද? අපේ කම්පැනි එකට 90,000 දෙනවා. discounted value එකක් දෙන්න. Clearද? ඒතකොට අපිට අද 90,000 හම්බ වෙනවා. Clearද? And on the particular day in future, this factoring company will collect 100,000 from this debtor. We are just getting 90,000. So what we did was we sold the debtor to that company at a discounted rate. Discounted rate එකට විකුණන්නේ. මොකද මෙයා 100,000 දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඇයි? මෙයාට දැන් අද මෙයා ගත්තා කියලා මෙයාට he has to wait until this 31st December comes නේ. දෙසැම්බර් 31 වෙනකම් පුතා මෙයා ඉන්නත් එපා. ඒතකොට ඒ වෙනකන් එයාට යන ටයිම් එක වෙනුවෙන් එයා charge එකක් ගන්න. That is the 10,000 profit he is earning. Clearද? So he will accept he will be able to collect කියලා accept කරගන්නවා මෙයාගේ හරි මම ගන්නම් එයාගෙන් එදාට 100,000 අද මම ඔයාලට දෙන්නම් 90,000. That is what you mean by factoring. This is also one way you can increase the availability of working capital. In a factoring කියන එක understood නේද? We have learned this point, the same point when we are discussing the 7th lesson. So that is what you mean by factoring. Clear ළමයි එහෙනම් factoring the debtors. Next point එක ලියමු factoring the debtors. Factoring the debtors. Factoring the debtors. අතරම කරන්නේ අපි debtor විකුණනවා වෙන කෙනෙකුට. debtor අපිට ගෙවන්න තියෙනවා වෙනකොට එයාට කියනවා collect කරගන්න කියලා. අපිට discounted value එකකට එයාගේ settlement එක ගන්න. Factoring the debtors. Another one simple thing is available. What is that? We can use, if you want to increase the availability of working capital, what we can do is we can simply use what? Bank overdraft. And using bank overdraft. Using bank overdraft is the next point. Using bank overdraft. Using bank overdraft. Bank OD. We have learned. Where we learned this 7th lesson, bank overdraft, permanent bank overdraft and temporary bank overdraft. I hope you can remember short term and long term bank overdraft even. Is that all right? That's all. So these are the ways you can apply. These are the ways you can apply to increase your working capital or increase the availability of cash on your hand for what? Day-to-day business activities. Clearly, understood the points. Right. That's all. So we have already discussed working capital. එතකොට ළමයි අපේ topic එක අපි පොඩ්ඩක් විතර deviate වෙලා ආවා to talk about or further about to learn working capital. Clear there? Right. Okay. Our main topic was fund requirements of a business. How many fund requirements we have? 2 kinds of fund requirements. What they are, short term and long term. Short term we call them as working capital requirements, and the long term we call them as the fixed capital requirement. Now we are moving forward. Now you know we have 2 kinds of requirements. What those requirements? Then requirements short term and long term. Working fixed. Clear? Now in order to fulfill these requirements, we may have different ways to fulfill these requirements. Requirement short term requirement long term requirement. That's all right. But when it's come to how we can fulfill, there may be different ways of fulfilling these requirements. Clear that? Then We will have a small topic. We'll have a small topic. We will call it as Chettike, who is, I can't understand what. Can you repeat that question again? Putab, I can't understand the way you have asked me. පොඩ්ඩක් ඒක දාන්න Zoom එකේ ඉන්න මේ ළමයා question එකක් අහලා තියෙනවා. I can't understand. Okay, right, okay. Have the topic, have the topic. Different sources of financing or different sources of funding කියන්නත් පුළුවන් ළමයා. Different sources of funding or different sources of financing. Right. අපි පොඩ්ඩක් තමයි ඔකේ definition එක නිකන් පොඩි paragraph එකක් වගේ ලියමු. ලියලා ඉවරලා ඊට පස්සේ discuss කරමු. Clear? Right. The above the above fund requirements the above two fund requirements, namely short-term fund requirements and long-term fund requirements. The above fund requirements, namely short-term fund requirements and long-term fund requirements. Short-term fund requirements and long-term fund requirements can be fulfilled in different ways. Can be fulfilled in different ways. Can be fulfilled in different ways. දැන් ළම අපිට requirements දෙකක් නේ තිබුණේ long term එකයි short term එකයි නේ. මේ දෙක fulfill කරන්න නම් ළමයි we have to find some sources නේ. මේ sources ළමයි could be in different ways. මේ එක එක විදි වලට තියෙනවා. ඒක තමයි ඔය කතා කරන්න යන්නේ. Can be fulfilled in different ways. Such different ways are known as sources of fund or sources of financing. Such different ways are known as sources of financing or sources of funding. Sources of financing or sources of funding. Such different ways are known as sources of funding or sources of financing. Right. Starting from a new rule, අලුත් rule එකකින් පටන් ගන්න තමයි. These sources of funding can be classified. These sources of funding can be classified. These sources of funding can be classified based on based on three criteria based on three criteria based on three criteria based on three criteria. Right. Understood නේද ළමයි දැන් මේ කතා කරපේ කොන්න පොඩ්ඩක් ආයෙ දැන් පාඩම් කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. Understand කරගන්න මෙහෙම මේ. Now we discussed there are two kinds of fund requirements in a business organization. What they are? Short term and long term. But when we, if, let's say if we want to fulfill the short term requirements, there are different ways. Let's say we have long-term fund requirements, there are again different ways. All of these different ways we can use to fulfill these fund requirements. It can be either short-term or long-term. The different ways which are available to fulfill these requirements are called as what? Source of fundings or source of financing. That is what we are going to learn. මේක තමයි ඉතින් පුතා ඉගෙන ගන්න යන්නේ source of financing or source of funding. And as we wrote අපි ලියාගත්තා වගේ තමයි කොහොමද මේ types ටික මේ different source of fundings we can classify based on three criteria. මේක criteria තුනකට පුතා classify කරන්න පුළුවන් මේ different ways. ඒක exam එකේ වාගේ අහනවා. ඒක වාගේ exam එකේ අහනවා අහලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් අහයිවි නේ අහලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඔයාගෙනුත් අහවි නේ. Can be tested in your exam as well. Very simple. ඉතින් ලා මේ තුන ලියමු right. First one. එහෙනම් ලියන්න පොඩි topic එකක් ලියන්න. පොඩි topic එකක් ලියන්න. criteria to classify source of financing or source of funding. Right, Madhuta criteria to yes, we'll write one by one. First one, based on first one based on first criteria based on source or according to the source according to the source you can classify the different financing sources based on the source එක base කරලා පුතා classify කරන්න පුළුවන්. Second one, according to the method or based on method of obtaining then finally based on time clear එහෙනම් ළමයි criteria කීයක් තියෙන්නේ? There are three criteria. What those three criteria are? Source based එකයි, method based එකයි, method of obtaining based එකයි, at the same time time based එකයි. Clear? Now what we are going to learn you can understand. දැන් ඔයාලට තේරෙනවා අපි ඉගෙන ගන්න වෙලාවේ මේ තුන වෙන වෙනම discuss කළා what are the different ways or now these are the different bases we can or the criteria we can use to classify the source of fundings. And first of all, we are going to take how we can classify the source of fundings based on what? The source base. Source එක base කරලා classify කරන්න කොහොමද කියලා ඉගෙන ගන්න යන්නේ. Right. Okay then. Right. Now first one you can have classification of source of funding. First point එක ලියන්න. Classification of source of funding based on the source, based on the source. Classification of source of funding based on the source, based on the source. Right. Now, if we classify the source of fundings based on the source, now base එක නැත්තම් criteria එක මොකක්ද? Source. Source එක base කරලා තමයි source of fundings classify කරන්න යන්නේ. Clear the basic you have to understand, because at the exam you will ask how you are going to classify based on the source, how you are going to classify the source of fundings. That can be a question at the exam, right? So when you are classifying based on the source, it can be two ways or the two types: internal sources and external sources. External sources. Clear that? So these are the two types. Clear? Now when it's come to internal sources can internal sources are what? Now whenever you want to have funds, clear that? It could be for working capital or it could be for fixed capital. දෙකටම වෙන්න පුළුවන් ආ. දැන්ලා මේ දෙකටම ආට funds ගන්න පුළුවන් methods මොනවද කියලා මේ කතා කරන්නේ. ආද requirement දෙක මොනවද? ආයෙ මතක් කරගන්න. requirement දෙක මොනවද? short term එකයි long term එක. නැත්නම් working capital එකයි fixed capital එක. මේ requirements දෙකටම පුතා ඔයාට මොනවා ඕනද? funds හොයාගන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට ඒ funds හොයාගන්න තියෙන different methods වලට අපි කියනවා මොනවද කියලාද? source of fundings කියලා. ඒවා classify කරන්න එක තමයි මුලින්ම මේ කරන්න යන්නේ. එතකොට ඔයාට three different bases තියෙනවා මේවා classify කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකේ first base එක තමයි source base එක. Clearද? ඉතින් according to that, if you classify the source of fundings based on the sources, there are two kinds of sources. What they are? Internal sources and the external sources. Now, internal sources are kinds of sources where you can find the funds internally without the engagement of external parties. Then you have a fund requirement in your personal life. Personal life fund requirement what are the two? If you classify the whenever you have fund requirement, you will get different ways. These are the ways I can collect my funds, or I can fulfill my fund requirement. One thing, I have a friend like this, I can ask from him. I can ask from parents. Yes. I have some saved money in my drawer. I can use that. And also there's a bank, I can go and ask a loan from them. I have my own credit card, I can use that. And different ideas. So those are what you know as on the source of fundings. So if you classify those source of fundings based on the source, there are two different kinds of sources. What they are: internal sources and the external sources. Internal sources without the engagement of any external parties, you can collect, as long as you can collect the funds. That is what you know as internal sources. First thing, if you have some saved funds in your pocket or wherever, in your drawer or under the bed, whatever, or if you have some saved money in your bank account, you can use that. So that is internal. Is that, are you going to engage with another party? නෑ කාගෙන් හරි ඉල්ල ගන්නවා නෑ ඔයාගේ internally ම use කරනවා. or else ළමයි ගෙදරින්ම හොයාගන්න. Clear කීයක් internally. Clear. So that is what you mean by internal fund sources are. Those are what you call as internal fund sources. මොනවද පුතා examples business එක example මොනවද? Retained profits. Retained profits. You know දැන් පුතා මම මේ අපි මේ lesson එක පටන් ගන්නකොට පුතා when we are throughout this financial management lesson, all the examples we are taking relevant to what kind of business organizations? Incorporated companies. දැන් අපි හැමතිස්සෙම පුතා මේ business ෆයිනෑන්ෂල් මැනේජ්මන්ට් ලෙසන් එකේම හැමතිස්සෙම එක්සාම්පල්ස් ගන්නේ කාට රෙලෙවන්ට් විදියටද මොන බිස්නස් එකකද ඉන්කෝපරේටඩ් කම්පැනි එකක you know in an incorporated company the profit they have earned will not totally distribute to the shareholders. They will keep a portion internally for the future purposes. එවා දන්නවනේ අර accounting වල ගාන හදද්දි retain profit එකක් ගන්න. මුළු profit එකම පුතා shareholders ලට they are not giving as the dividends. They have to keep a portion internally for the future purposes. So whenever you have a fund requirement, yes, you can use that funds or that retained profits in one of your accounts. You can use that as one of your internal source. Is that understood right? Again, Lamai, what else you can do is you can sell extra assets. Extra assets මොනවා හරි තියෙනවා නම් පුතාට විකුණන්න පුළුවන්ද? Oh, yes. Selling extra assets. That is another way you can generate internal funds. Clear? What else? Again, you can control or strictly control your day-to-day expenses. Day-to-day expenses. This is also way to generate internal funds. දැන් මෙහෙම හිතන්නකෝ ළමයි ගෙදර මොකක් හරි මේ මාසේ අන්තිමට තාත්තා හිතාගෙන ඉන්නවා it's තාත්තා is thinking to buy a refrigerator. එතකොට මේ මාසේ මොකද කරන්නේ? Internal funds කරගන්න පුළුවන් කොහොමද? Internal funds generate කරගන්නේ කොහොමද මේකට? Asking you not to switch on additional lights within this month. මේ මාසේ ඔන්න කට්ටියටම advice කරනවා. Do not switch on any additional lights. Do not keep the fans on whenever you are not there. Clear? අන්න පොඩ strict එකක් දාන්න. පොඩක් තද කරලා. එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? Your monthly electricity bill will reduce. As a result of that, you can save some funds, and that funds could be used for your requirement. That is also a way. අර එදා ඒකේ තියෙන පුතා day to day expenses control කරගන්නවා කියන්නේ one way you can generate internal funds. ඔය ගෙදර example එක තමයි කරන්නේ නියම example එක. දැන් businesses වල also they are doing නේ. If they want to generate some funds, what they are doing? Yes, they will control the day-to-day expenses. So you can see during the daytime, from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock time, you just go and see the textile shops. They are not switching on air conditions. To do what? That's how they're strictly controlling the day-to-day expenses. They make up that strictly controlling day-to-day expenses. Also, you can say strictly control of day-to-day you can say strictly controlling what? Working capital කිව්වත් ඕකම තමයි. Understood නේද? Working capital එක control කරනවා. Clear? The one day-to-day expense scale you just for you to understand how you know day-to-day expenses, day-to-day activities spending is working capital. So you can strictly controlling those working capital to generate internal sources. Clear, Rama? Is that understood? Is that understood? Right. Another way you can generate funds is what? Internal sources. Internal sources. Sorry, external sources. External sources. What are the external sources? You can obtain a loan. Bank loan එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන් ළමයි ටක් ගාලා එළියේ. Bank loan. Bank loan. What is? Leasing, leasings, even higher purchasing is possible. Bank overdraft, bank OD, මම මෙතන bank OD කියලා ලියන ළමයි. What else? Uh, higher purchase, higher purchase agreements. So all these things are what you call as external sources. එතකොට පුතා ඔයාලට externally funds හොයා ගන්නත් පුළුවන්, internally funds හොයා ගන්නත් පුළුවන්. Internally funds හොයා ගන්නවා කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Internal fund source means you are finding the required funds internally without getting any engagement with external parties. Internally හොයා ගන්න. Internally ඔයාගේ business එක ඇතුළේම හොයා ගන්න. External means what? You are finding our funds or you are getting the funds from external parties. That is what you call as external funding sources. Clear? So this is how you are classifying the source of funding based on what? Base එක මතක තියාගෙන මොකද what is the base? Based on the source. ළමයි ටක් ගාලා දාගමු. topic එක අපි ලිව්වනේ. මේක අඳගත්තත් okay. If not, you can have a screenshot even. Screenshot එකක් ගහගත්තත් okay. Screenshot එකක් ගහගත්තත් okay. මම මෙතන කවට් කීපයක් ළමයි තව one more point එකක් මම මෙතන ලියන්න. අපිට පොඩ්ඩක් මම ස්පේස් එක එන්නකෝ ගන්න මෙතන. Right, so I will write some more point මෙතන. Allocation for depreciation. Allocation for depreciation. මෙතන අපි ලියුවා bank loan, leasing, bank OD, hire purchase, share issue. Debenture issue, share issue, debenture issue, share issue, debenture issue. All these are known as external sources නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ තමයි external party එකක engagement එකකින් fund source කරනවා on external sources. Without any external party engagement, if you are finding the funds internally, those are what you call as internal sources. ළමයි මේවා define කරන්න ඔයාගෙන් අහන්නේ. define කරන්න ඉන්නේ මේ හැබැයි classification එකේ you have to have the knowledge. What do you mean by internal sources and what do you mean by external sources with the examples then again ignore it, because at the exam you will be given some set of source of funds and ask you to classify whether they are internal or external. That is a popular question, will be tested at the exam. Clear neda? මේ allocation of depreciation ළමයි කොහොමද පොඩක් understand that. Those who are not doing accounting, you know, whenever each and every year we are allocating or we are allocate some funds for the depreciation. So end of the useful life of that particular asset, there will be a amount of funds remaining in one of your accounts, so you can use that funds to repurchase the new asset. නේ අලුතෙන් asset එක ගන්නකොට ඒක පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් ඔයා හැම අවුරුද්දෙම පුතා මොකද කරන්නේ? profit and loss එකෙන් separate allocate කරනවා profit එකක්. profit එකේ මේ expense එකක් විදියට ඒක දානවා වෙනම allocation එකකට depreciation කියලා. over the 5 years or the 10 years of that particular useful life, you are doing that. End of the useful life, you will have a huge fund in that account, so you can use that funds for to fulfill your requirements. Clear? So that is the meaning. Clear? Right, good. Then we are going to classify. We are going to classify. Again, then මොනවා first classification එක ඉගෙන ගත්තා, right? Second classification එක base එක source of fundings, source of fundings. Right, now we are going to classify based on the second criteria. What is the second criteria? Second criteria එක මොකක්ද ළමයි? Based on the method. Based on the method. මේ බලන්න පුතා මොකක්ද අපේ third classification එක? Based on the method of obtaining. Based on the method of obtaining. Based on method of obtaining. When we are classifying based on method of obtaining, again lamai, there are two kinds of fund sources. There are two kinds of fund sources. What they are? Direct fund sources and indirect fund sources. Direct fund sources and indirect fund sources. Right. ළමයි මේ method එකට තව word එකක් අපි use කරනවා. මේ criteria එකට අපි තව word එකක් use කරනවා. The same thing but we are using a different criteria as well. මේකට තව alternative name එකක් තියෙනවා. මොකද්ද? Based on the participation of intermediaries. Based on the participation of intermediaries or based on the participation of middlemen කියලාත් කියනවා. Middlemen කියලාත් කියනවා. දෙකම හරිය. Based on the participation of intermediaries, based on the participation of middlemen or method of obtaining. Clear? Right. So those are what you call as direct funds and the indirect funds. ළමයි direct funds මොනවාද examples? Direct funds වලට examples මොනවාද? මම මේක explain කරන්න කොහොමද මේක direct ද indirect ද කියලා අල්ලගන්නේ කියන එක explain කරනවා. But we will write the examples first. Direct examples මොනවාද? Yes. Retained profits. Profits is a direct source. Then share issue. Share issue. Debenture issue. Share issue, debenture issue. Selling extra assets. Provision for depreciation. Provision for depreciation or allocation for depreciation. ළමයි දෙකම එකයි. අපි කලින් එකේ allocation for depreciation කියලා ලිව්වා. මෙතන මේ එතන allocation for depreciation කියලා කිව්වා. This is also provision. සාමාන්‍ය අපේ accounting වල කියන provision කියලානේ. Provision for depreciation is the same. Provision for depreciation is the same. So these are the direct sources. නිකන් ලියා ගන්නවා මම explain කරනවා මේක direct source එක indirect source එක how you are going to differentiate. I'll explain. What are the indirect sources මොනවද ළමයි? Indirect sources මොනවද? Leasing, then bank loans, bank overdraft, factoring, commercial papers, commercial papers, commercial papers. මම finally ලියලා ළමයි commercial papers කියන එක. If it is not clear, it's commercial papers. Can we have this? ළමයි ටක් ගාලා මේක දාගන්න. Screenshot එකක් හරි if you want to draw this you can draw. Clear? Right. Now මෙතනදී මේ direct sources and indirect sources කියලා කියන්නේ simply let's say if you can fund or find the funds without the agreement of any other party, without getting with an agreement with any other party, or without getting agreed with a additional party's condition. Clear? Those are what you call as direct fund sourcings. I කියනවා මේ අහන්නකො. Direct fund sourcings කියලා පුතා අපි උතන්දි ගන්නේ with the ways where we can find the funds without going for an agreement or without getting to the conditions of any other parties. වෙන කෙනෙක් එක්ක පුතා agreement එකකට යන්නෙත් නැහැ. හරිද? එතකොට වෙන කෙනෙක්ගේ conditions වලට අපි bound වෙන්නෙත් නැහැ. නැත්තම් යටත් වෙනවයි කියලා අපි කියන්නේ වෙන කෙනෙක්ගේ conditions වලට යටත් වෙනවා. එහෙම වෙන්නෙත් නැහැ. agreement එකකට යන්නෙත් නැතුව. What are the ways you can collect the funds? Those are what you call as direct funds. The retain profits ගන්නකොට අපිම අපේම company එක earn කරපු profit එක දැන් අපි retain profit එකක් විදියට separate කරලා තියෙනවා අපේ account එකක. අපි ළමයි agreement එකක් ඕනද වෙන කෙනෙක් එක්ක පාර යන කාත් එක්ක හරි agreement එකක් ගහන්නද ඕක use කරන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙනම් ඒක direct source එකක්. Clearද? Share issue එකක් කරන්න පුතා අපිට let's say as a incorporated company now we want to issue shares and collect funds. Do we have to get the approval from any other party? No. Do we have to get into the contract with any other parties? No. Do we have to bow to other parties' conditions? No. අපිට පුළුවන් we can decide as long there are some conditions we have to satisfy, but that's not the case. We can independently decide and do it. නේ මේක independent පැත්තක් මේක තියෙන මේක independent. Independently we can perform this. Debentures we can independently perform it. Selling our assets, yes. අපි කාගෙන් හරි අහන්න ඕනද පුතා අපේ තියෙන asset එකක් විකුණන්න කලින් නෑ. If there is no any other conditions, we can sell our assets independently and collect the funds. So that's why we are calling them as what? Direct funds. Provision for depreciation, you know, as I explained before, each and every year we are provisioning some funds to one of the accounts, and in case if you want to use these funds again for something else or to buy a new asset, do we have to ask from any other party? No. අපිට වෙන අයගෙන් අහන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. ඒක අපේ. So you can use it independently. So those are what you call as direct funds. Indirect funds means what? There are some fund sources or way of fundings where you have to get into an agreement with another party. Without that agreement, you can't use. Or else you have to get bound for their condition and use these things. දැන් ළමයි බලන්නකො leasing එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන් agreement එකක් නැතුව කවුද lease එක දෙන්නේ වාට? Lease facilities are provided by commercial banks or financial institutes. So you have to get into an agreement. So you have to get bound to their conditions. යාගේ conditions වලට යටත් වෙන්න ඕනේ නැද්ද? ඔව් යටත් වෙන්න ඕනේ. Can you do it independently as we are doing these types? මේ direct ඒවා කරාම independently කරන්න පුළුවන්. No, you have to depend on their conditions. So such kind of fund sourcings are what you call as indirect funds. ඔන්න ඕක පොඩ්ඩක් ළමයිට ටිකක් පැටලෙනවා. මම හිතනවා දැන් ඒක ක්ලියර් වුණා කියලා. මොකද ක්ලාසස් වල ටීවී ස්කූල්ස් වල ඕක පොඩ්ඩක් හරියට එක්ස්ප්ලেইন උනේ නැති වුණොත් ඩිරෙක්ට් එක මොකද්ද ඉන්ඩිරෙක්ට් එක මොකද්ද කියන එක හොයාගන්න මෙතඩ් එක හරියට ළමයිට ක්ලික් වෙලා නැහැ. Clear? How to find? Very easy. Indirect fund sourcings කියලා කියන්නේ ළමයි if you have to get into an agreement or if you have to bound to the other party's conditions and if you cannot go independent නෑ මේවා depend වෙනවා ගොඩක් කාත් එක්ක depend වෙලා යන්න වෙන්නේ අන්න ඒ type එකේ fund sources වලට අපි කියන්නේ indirect funds කියලා. ලියද මේ bank loan එකේදී පුතා don't you have to bound with the bank's conditions? Yes, you have to bound with the bank conditions. You have to accept the bank's condition. You have to get into an agreement with them. Clear? Is that independent? No, you are dependent. You have to be dependent on their conditions. Yes, bank code is the same. Factoring, yes, I explained what you mean by factoring. You are selling your debtors to another part. You have to get into an agreement with them. Commercial papers, the same. Clear? So those are what you call as direct funds and the indirect funds. Clear? Understood the right. එතකොට මේක ඔන්න understand කරගන්න තව එක point එකක් කියලා දුන්නා. තමයි මේ බලන්න මේ මෙන්න මෙතන පොඩි comparison එකක් කරගන්න ඔයාගෙන same page තියනවා ලේසි. Now retained profits according to the source criteria එක ගත්තොත් තමයි ඒක internal. But if we take that according to this one, it is coming under direct funds. Clear? එතකොට exam එකේදී ඔන්න ඔය විදිහට අහනවා kind of asking you to select the fund source which is direct as well as internal. අන්න එතකොට තමයි ඔයාලට මේ knowledge එක ඕන වෙන්නේ. එතකොට ඔයාලට කියනවා direct internal එක හොයන්න කියලා. ඒ කියන්නේ direct එකේ තියෙන internal එකේ තියෙන. නම් මොකද ඔය retained profits කියන එක ගන්න පුළුවන් මේ retained profits ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ selling extra assets පුළුවන් මේ දෙකම පුළුවන්. මේ තුනම පුළුවන්. clear? මේ තුනම මෙතනක් තියෙනවා මේ. clear? හැබැයි පුතා මේ බලන්න මේ share issue එක ගන්න මේ share issue එක මේක direct but මේ පැත්තෙන් නම් මොනවද? external debenture also. Clear? අන්න ඒකයි knowledge එක ළමයි වාගෙන් expect කරන්නේ මෙතනදී. Other than that definition knowledge is not expected. වාගෙන් අහන්නේ internal sources කියන එක define කරන්න. ඒක අහුවොත් ඔයාලා ලියන්න පුළුවන් නේ. Internal sources are the funding sources we can the find internal fund sources. ඒව අහන්නේ නැහැ. වාගෙන් අහන්නේ අන්න අර knowledge එක. Internal direct fund එක මොකක්ද? External direct එක මොකක්ද? ඔය වගේ mix කරලා අහන්න. Clear? So you need to have the knowledge of differentiating them. Not the definition knowledge is expected from you. Is that all right? So criteria, how many criteria we have to classify the source of fundings? 3 criteria I have. Out of them, 2 we have completed. Remaining only one. මෙතන yes මෙතන පුතා මේ ෆයිනල් එක මම ලියලා තියෙන commercial papers. Shall I write it in a clear way? මෙතන ලියපු පුතා commercial papers කියලා ලියලා තියෙන. හරි නේද? මම මෙතන ආයෙ ලියන්නද? Commercial papers. Commercial papers. Okay නේද? Okay, fine, good. So we'll move to the final one. So we are going to classify the source of fundings based on the third criteria, which is what you call as based on the time. Source of funding. Now we are going to classify based on what? Based on the time. Based on the time. Based on the time. Now the criteria is time. Very simple. Very simple. What those two are? Long term and short term. Long term and short term. It's almost the same like the fund requirements. The fund requirement එකෙත් තිබුණේ තමයි long term short term නේ. ඒතර ඒක fill කරගන්න පුළුවන් time based classification එකෙත් මොකද්ද? Long term short term. Long term. Like long term එකට examples මොනවාද years? Long term examples are share issue. Share issues, debenture issue. Debenture issue. Leasing. Long-term bank loans. Long-term bank loans. These are the source of fundings or source of financing based on the time classification or the time criteria. These are the long-term source of financing or source of funding. What are the short-term? Short-term bank overdraft. Bank overdraft. Bank overdraft. Commercial papers. Commercial papers. Trade loans. Trade loans. ඒ කියන්නේ අර creditors කියන එකම තමයි trade loans කියලා කියන්නේ. You are getting the stocks on credit basis like that. Delaying payments. Delaying payments. Delaying payments. මෙතනදී short term long term අපි කොහොමද identify කරගන්නේ? Let's say if we get more time or even more than 1 year period of time to settle the financings, those are what you call as long term. Shares issue debenture. Once you issue the debentures, you will have to set off or settle these debentures mostly after 1 or 2 years. නේ සාමාන්‍ය usually පුතා debenture එකක් කියන එක අවුරුදු 5ක් විතර යනවා settle කරන්න. Leasings, are they giving for 6 months leasing? No, usually they are giving more than 1 year period of time you to settle. Usually 4 years, 5 years, 7 years. Long-term bank loans, will they ask you to settle within 6 months? Long-term bank loans, no, they will give you or provide you more than 1 year period of time to settle. So such kind of financings are what you call as long-term financing or long-term funding. Clear the short-term you will have to settle these funds within shorter period of time or within 1 year period of time. Those are what you call as short-term financings or short-term fundings. But they are bank OD. Can you drag the bank OD for 10 years? No. Once you use the bank OD and if your bank is on OD level, you have to settle that within mostly 30 days of time. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් දවස් 30ක් ඇතුළත settle කරන්න ඕනේ. bank OD එකක් ඔයා use කරොත්. You can drag it but not more than 1 year period of time. Commercial papers, yes. Trade loans. So trade loans is almost similar to creditors. Clear the creditors potama. So can you drag the creditors without settling them for 10 years? No. Maximum 90 days you have to settle them. So those are short term. Delaying payments, can you delay the payments for 10 years or 5 years, even more than 2 years? No. You can delay the payments 1 or 2 months maximum. Thereafter you have to pay. So those are what you call as short term financings. Short term financial sources or short term, but then about long term finance source කියන්න පුළුවන්. Short term finance source එහෙම හදාගත්තත් okay. Clear නේද? Right, okay. අන්තලා මේක you can draw it very quickly. Right, everything fine nේද ළමයි so far? Is that good? Fine, good. So what we are going to now, we are almost in the final part. What we are going to do is, Lamai, we have to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each of these types. Now, make a product exams can be tested. What are the advantages and disadvantages? So quickly, we will discuss them and finish. Right? Okay. Then first of all, we will take. We classified the financing or the source of financing based on three classifications. So the first one was based on the sources. You know what the internal sources and the external sources are. Now we are going to discuss what are the advantages and disadvantages of internal and external sources. Clear that? Right. And then topic kya karna puta gala. Advantages of internal sources. internal sources. පුතා advantages of internal sources කියන්නේ ඕකේ opposite එක disadvantages of what? External sources. එතකොට ඔයා දෙකටම අපි එකපාර ලියන්නේ external sources. Advantages of internal sources කියලා කියන්නේ disadvantages of what? External sources. We are just writing one answer, but you can apply for both. Clear? The internal sources, we are collecting the required funds internally without finding any other parties or without asking from any other external parties. We are going to find the funds internally within the organization itself. One ළමයි මේකේ තියෙන advantages. මොකද පුතා advantages තියෙන්නේ. දැන් ඔයාට සල්ලි වුණාම ඔයා ගෙදරින්ම හොයා ගන්නවා. එළියෙන් කාගෙවත් ඉල්ලන්න යන්නේ නැහැ. Clearද? මොකක්ද තියෙන වාසි? Yes. You will not have to pay any interest නේ. interest එකක් ගෙවන්න වෙනවද? නෑ නේ. ගෙදරින් ඉල්ලගත්තොත් අම්මගෙන් තාත්තගෙන් do you have to pay any interest for them? No. එහෙනම් cost is low because there is no interest you have to pay. එහෙනම් low cost. bracket එක ඇතුලේ ලියන්න since no interest to pay. Since no interest to pay or less interest to pay. සමහර වෙලාවට interest එකක් තියෙන බෑ. හැබැයි ඉතින් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට interest එකක් නැහැ. නේ? right. එතකොට ඕක තමයි පුතා external එකේ disadvantage. මොකද්ද? external එකේ disadvantage එක. You have to pay an interest. If you are taking the funds from external parties, you have to pay an interest definitely, නේ? Right. Other thing is like make advantage මොකද්ද? If you are finding the funds internally, you can collect them very quickly and find very easily නේ. දැන් ගෙදරින් සල්ලි ඉල්ල ගන්නවා තාත්තේ හෙට ඕනේ රුපියල් 5000ක් ඕනේ. කමන්න හෙට උදේ මට මතක් කරන්නකෝ තාත්තට අගල බස් ගරිය දුන්නා. But if you are going to apply a bank loan, you have to complete the documents, you have to go and meet the bank manager, you have to find the guarantors, you have to come to an agreement. It will take a long time. යාළුවෙක්ගෙන් ඉල්ල ගන්නවා යාළුවෝ කියන්නේ external party නේ. Yes, යාළුවෝ what would say? Okay, I can give you, but you have to wait until I get my salary. So you have to wait for that as well. So you have to take some time. So the advantage of internal sources is what? Can obtain the funds easily and quickly. Can obtain the funds easily and quickly. Can obtain the funds easily and quickly. එහෙනම් ඔකේ disadvantage එක ලියන්නේ කොහොමද පුතා external එකේදී? Take more times to obtain funds and it may be difficult. Difficulties of obtaining the funds are taking more times. Understood නේ? ඒක අර පැත්තට හරවලා ලියනවා. අය දෙපාරක් ලියනම time waste කරන්න ඕනේ නෑනේ. The same thing. අන්තිකව පාඩම් කරන්නත් ඕනේ එක point එකයි. ඔකම අනිත් පැත්තට හරවනවා ලේසි. මම එහෙම ලියන්න පුළුවන් points ටික තමයි ඔයාලට දෙන්නේ. හරි නේද? ඒක ලේසි පුතා එක පැත්තක් study කරගත්තාම අනිත් පැත්තට automatically apply කරගන්න ලේසි. Is that understood? right? තව point එකක් ලියමු. ළමයි මෙහෙම හිතන්නකෝ. If you are taking, now you know නේ මම කිව්වනේ from this day we started this lesson, this is always it relates with what? Accounting. මේක accounting එකලා මාර connected subject එක lesson එක නේ. ඉතින් මේකේ ඔයා දන්නවා if you take external funds, it will increase your what? You know නේ accounting formula එක දන්නවනේ. Equity plus liability equals assets. If you are finding external funds, then the internal fund external funds it will increase your what? Your liabilities increase. But if you are using internal funds, it will not increase your liability. Liability increase liabilities are the things you have to settle for the external party. So if you are using external sources, it may increase or it will increase your liabilities, which is not good for you. But if you are using internal funds, it will not increase your liabilities. That is an advantage. එහෙනම් පුතා ලියන්න. No increase of liabilities. No increase of liabilities. එහෙනම් කොහොමද පුතා මේකේ external disadvantage එකට ලියන්නේ? External disadvantage එකට කොහොමද ලියන්නේ? Increase of liabilities. It is an disadvantage of external funds. තේරෙනවා ළමයි අර විදිහේ එකම point එක convert කරලා ලියන්න පුළුවන්. Right. Clear නේද? Right. That's all. එහෙනම් ළමයි ඕකම අපි ලියමු ආයෙ පාරක්. දැන් මෙතන disadvantages of internal funds. Disadvantages of internal sources. ඔක්කොම තමයි අනිත් පැත්ත මොකක්ද තමයි advantages of what? External sources. External source of funding කියලා කියන්න පුළුවන් පුතා. External sources කියලා just we are saying, but external source of fundings. Right. Clear නේ? now මම දැන් කතා කරන්නේ disadvantage. මොකක්ද disadvantages පුතා මේකේ තියෙන? disadvantages මොනවාද? ඒක තමයි external එකේ advantage එක වෙන්නේ. One thing is ළමයි, if you want to have huge amount of funds, sometimes internal may not be appropriate. නේ දැන් හිතන්නකෝ ඔයාට එකපාර ලක්ෂ 50ක් විතර ඕන වෙනවා සල්ලි බිස්නස් එකක් පටන් ගන්න. තාත්තා ගාව තියෙන ඉතර ගානක් එකපාර ඉල්ල ගන්න බැරි වෙන්නේ. අම්මා ගාව නැහැ. ගෙදරින් බැරි වෙයි හිමුනොත් නේ. If you want to have that much of a huge amount of funds, definitely you have to get the support from external funds. එහෙනම් disadvantage එක internal එකේ මොකද්ද? May not be able to collect large amount of capital sometimes නේ. එහෙනම් අපි ලියමු අපි ලියමු පුතා මෙහෙම cannot be may not be suitable for large amount of funds. May not be suitable for large amount of funds. ලොකු ගාණක් පුතා internally collect කරගන්න අමාරු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So you have to go for external. දැන් retain profit එකක් තමයි ගමන් ලොකු ගාණක් නැතුව ඇති. එතකොට ඔයාලට share issue එකක් කරගන්න වෙනවා. අන්න external එකට යනවා. Clear නේද? May not be suitable for large amount of capital. To obtain large amount of capital. Large amount of funds, sorry. May not be suitable to obtain large amount of funds. තමයි whenever you are using clear, right? So whenever you are using the internal funds, sometimes puta, it may impact on your working capital as well. Now look at this one. Me විතර පොඩ්ඩක් බලන්න. මේ වෙන point එක තේරෙනවනේ නේ. Yes, here නේ. Strictly controlling working capital නේ. Internal source එක. So when you are strictly controlling, දැන් හිතන්නකෝ internally funds raise කරන්න ඕනේ හින්දා අපි strict control එකක් දානවා working capital වලට. For an example, as I said before, the Tata expects to purchase a refrigerator at the end of this month. So as an internal source of funding, he is asking everyone not to use much electricity within this month. වැඩිය ලයිට් දාන්න එපා ෆෑන් එක ඔෆ් කරන්න AC දානවා AC ඔෆ් කරන්න ඇයි මාසේ ලයිට් බිල අඩු කරලා ඒන සල්ලි වලින් දා ෆ්‍රිජ් එක ගන්න හදන්නේ cleared so that may a kind of a pressure on working capital ඔයාට එන මේ ෆ්‍රිජ් එකක් මේ මාසේ අන්තිමට ගන්න හදනවා ඒකට මල කරදරේ ෆෑන් එක දාන්න දෙන්නෙත් නෑ ඔහොම කියවෙන්නේ නැද්ද නේ නැත්තම් තා මාස දෙක තුනකින් මේ කාර් එකක් ගන්න හදනවා ඒක ගන්නවයි කියලා ගෙදර කන්නත් නෑ කෑම වියදමත් අඩු කරනවා මේ ලයිට් එක දාන්න දෙන්නෙත් නෑ ෆෑන් එක අන්න ළම උම එන්නේ නැද්ද නිකන් පොඩි ග්‍රීවන්ස් එකක් that could happen clear එහෙනම් ඉන්ටර් ෆන්ඩ් එකක් විතර පුතා මේක යූස් වෙද්දී අන්න අර ප්‍රෙෂර් එක එනවා එහෙනම් ලියමු next one මෙතන පොයින්ට් එක ලියන්න pressure on කොතන ළමයි මෙලින්නේ මේ මෙතන නේ pressure on or unnecessary pressure on working capital 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 okay තමයි right එහෙනම් අපි වෙන advantages disadvantages කතා කරා internal sources external sources දෙකේම එකපාර කතා කරා internal එකේ advantages තමයි external එකේ disadvantages internal එකේ disadvantages තමයි external එකේ advantages clear නේ එතකොට දෙපැත්තටම ඔයාලට use කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන points ටික මම දුන්නේ right එහෙනම් අපි ලියමු තමයි ඊළඟට advantages of direct sources right ළමයි direct source එකේ advantages තමයි මොකද්ද indirect source එකේ disadvantages වෙන්නේ නම් slash එකක් දාලා ලියන්න disadvantages of indirect sources right මොනවද පුතා advantages ටික direct source එකේ advantages මොනවද one thing is lamai you now direct sources means without getting into agreements or without bounding with the external parties conditions you are independently find your sources that is what you mean by direct sources ne අපි කතා කරේ එතකොට here the advantage is you do not have to bound with other parties conditions ඒක තමයි හොඳම advantage එහෙනම් අපි ලියමු first one no need to bound with no need to bound with conditions no need to bound with conditions no need to bound with conditions at the same time puta make this way when we are using the direct methods your cost or your interest would be low ne age interest එක අඩු වෙනවා fund source එකක් විතර මේක use කරොත් look at the sources available for direct funds මේ බා direct funds වලට මාත් තියෙන available sources කියලා here retained profits share issues almost the things you can do independently clear so as a result of that your cost would be low එහෙනම් sourcing cost එක නැත්නම් අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් පුතා මෙතන cost is low second point එක low cost of funding low cost of fundings clear නේද ළමයි right එහෙනම් අපි ලියමු ඊළඟට disadvantages ටික ලියමු මේකෙම disadvantages ඊළඟට we are going to write disadvantages so this part is over we just wrote 2 points that's enough make a disadvantage so we are making this as disadvantage disadvantages of direct sources එතකොට මේක අනිත් පැත්තට කන්වර්ට් වෙන්න ඕන පුතා මොකද්ද මේක advantages of indirect sources. Now look at these things, internal sources. When you are using internal sources, it will expand the ownership of the business. Equity පැත්ත වැඩි වෙනවද නැද්ද? දැන් liability පැත්තනේ වැඩි වෙන්නේ external sorry මෙතන internal එකනේ අපි ගන්න ඕනේ පුතා. Internal here, this one. Internal sources and sorry internal direct sources and yes, direct source. When we are using direct sources පුතා මේ බලන්න මේ share issues ඕවා කරනකොට share issue එකක් වගේ ඔක්කොම නෙමෙයි share issues retail profits වගේ use කරනකොට it will expand your ownership of the business. Clear? And that may kind of so it will affect to your management decisions as well. Clear? Then disadvantage is what? Disadvantage is what? Expansion of ownership. First point, expansion of ownership. Expansion of ownership. Expansion of ownership. Expansion of ownership. First point. Second point, impact on management decisions. Impact on management decisions. Because whenever the ownership expands, the more power on management decisions they will have. Clear? So that could be a disadvantage for the organization. More impact on management decisions. Second point, more impact on management decisions. Right. ඕකම පුතා ඒතර advantage of indirect එකට කියනවා නම් කොහොමද වෙන්නේ? Can finance without the expansion of ownership. So no impact for the management decision. අන්න එමය මේ පැත්තට convert කරලා ලියන්න ඕනේ. Clear නේද? Right. Right. Then we will discuss ඔන්න ළමයි ඒකේ advantages disadvantages අපි කතා කරා. So we are going to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of long-term funds and short-term funds. Long-term funds and short-term funds. Right. මුලින්ම ගමු පුතා මෙතන advantages of advantages of long-term funds. So it is the meaning, or it is the, on the other hand, it's the disadvantages. Advantages of short-term funds. Right. Short-term fund එකට වඩා ළමයි long-term එකේ advantage එක මොකද්ද? Yes. You will have a long time period to settle the amounts. අර amount එක settle කරලා ගොඩක් කල් හම්බ වෙනවා. So එයා first one leave advantage එක. Long term for settlements. 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 Then second point, can be settled in installments. The installments වලින් ගෙවන්න පුළුවන් පුතා long term ඉන්න. They can be settled in installments. First point එක අපි ලිව්වේ long term for the settlements. Second point එක can be settled in installments. Can be settled in installments. Right. ළම long term funds වලින් තමයි පුතා ඔයාට ලොකු fund එකක් ඕන නම් long term fund එකකට යන්න වෙනවා. මොකද long term fund අපි දුක ලක්ෂ 100ක් 200ක් වගේ 100 million 200 million වගේ න they will not provide you on short-term basis. Definitely they will give you for long-term basis. So can obtain large amount of funds. Can obtain large amount of funds. Clear? එතකොට ඒකම පුතා convert කරන්න පුළුවන් disadvantages of short term වලටනේ. කොහොමද convert කරන්නේ? Yes, කොහොමද? Have to settle within a short period of time. No installments is possible. Clear? Cannot obtain large amount of funds. අන්න ඒ විදිහට convert කරන්න ඉතරයි. හරිද? very simple ලා මෙයා හිතලා ලියන්න පුළුවන්. but ඉතින් theory වල අපි ඔක්කොම දෙන්නත් එපා ළමයිට නැත්නම් ඉතින් අපිට හරි right okay එහෙනම් අපි කතා කරමු ළමයි ඊළඟට ටක් ගාලා මේකේ disadvantages පැත්ත. මෙයාගේ disadvantages of stages of long term funds. It is the advantages. It is the advantages. Advantages of short-term funds. Long-term funding disadvantage. When you are taking long-term to settle the debts, settle the funds back, you have to pay interest for a long period of time as well. As a result of that, your cost is really high. ඒක disadvantage එකක්ද? yes. නේ short-term loan එකක් කියලා මාස 6ක් ගෙවනවා පුතා මාස 6යි interest ගෙවන්නේ. අවුරුදු 5ක් if you are dragging as a long-term loan, then you will have to pay the interest for all 5 years. Clear? So definitely long-term funds will cost එක මොකද? Yes, it's increasing and a high cost of interest කිව්වත් okay. interest. පොලිය වැඩි ළමයියා. Clear නේද? simple කිව්වොත් long term funds ගන්නකොට ඒවයි interest එක වැඩි. long term funds වල interest එක වැඩි. At the same time, when you are applying for long-term funds, the bank or the party who is giving that funds knows you will take more time to settle this. So they will ask more what? More collaterals. They will ask. The collateral එක අහනවා. collateral එකක් කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? අපයා කියන එකනේ collaterals. Or the mortgage, they will ask you more mortgages or sometimes more collaterals they will ask. So but for the short term loans they will not ask much collaterals. Clearly the collaterals වලිය අහන්නේ නැහැ. හැබැයි long term එකේ අහනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ වා මොකක් හරි ගයක් හරි ඉඩමක් හරි අර මේ you have to pledge. නේ pledging සහන pledge කරනවා කියන එක දන්නවනේ you have to pledge and take the loan. But here the disadvantage is you will be asked for more collaterals but short term එකේදී එහෙම අහන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙනම් ලියමු have to pledge more collaterals. Have to pledge more pledge pledge කියනවා අර ඔකස් තියනවා කියන එක. pledge have to pledge more collaterals. Have to pledge more collaterals. Clear? So you can write the same in opposite manner for the advantages of short term. කොහොමද මේක advantage එකක් කරන්නේ? Yes, low cost. At the same time, no much requirement for the pledging and collaterals. And they might convert කරගන්න. Clear නේද ළමයි? Okay then. Good. So that is how you have to know ඔක අහන exams වල. Clear ළමයි? So that's all. So එහෙනම් ළමයි ඔන්න බලන්න මේ බලන්න look at the final thing what we have discussed. තා පොඩි part එකක් දෙන ඉවරෙච්ච ගමන් අද session එක ඉවරයි. අපි start කරේ කොතනද පුතා මෙතන මේ. We started here. නේ අපි ආයෙ අඳිමු මේ. Yes. In a business there are two funds requirements. Business එකක පුතා when it comes to a business there are two fund requirements. One is short-term fund requirement. One is short-term fund requirement. Short-term fund requirement. And the other one is the long-term fund requirement. This is what you call fixed capital. I think one again. This is what you call working capital requirement. Clear that? So when it's come to when you have one of these or the both these requirements, you have to find different sources to fulfill these requirements. To fulfill these requirements. These requirements can be classified into three ways. What are those three ways? Based on the time, based on the source, based on the method. Clear? At the same time, we discussed each and every type disadvantages and advantages also. Now, once you got these funds, then one requirement එකක් තිබුණා හරි requirement එකේ types දෙකයි. ඒ requirement එක fulfill කරගන්න පුළුවන් methods තුත් අපි කතා කරනවා. Now, once you are using these methods, you will get what? You will get the funds. Now, what you have to do? In financial management, what you have to do? You have to invest those funds efficiently in business activities. So we will have a small topic about the investing funds. එහෙනම් ඊළඟ step එකේදී දැන් මොකද කරන්නේ? දැන් fund requirement එක තිබුණා. Yes. ඊට පස්සේ ඒක fulfill කරගන්න sources ටික කතා කරා. Then when you are using those sources, you will get the funds. අන්න ඔයාලට දැන් fund එක එනවා. Now you have to use those funds or you have to invest those funds in a way the business can grow or in a efficient manner for business activities. එහෙනම් topic එක ලියන්න ළමයි. Next topic එක investing funds. Investing funds. Less than 10 minutes යන්නේ පුතා මේක discuss කරලා ඉවර කරන්න. හරිනේ? Investing funds. What do you mean by investing funds? Once we collect the or obtain the funds from different sources, as we discussed before, bank loan, making long term, making short term, making direct, making indirect, making internal funds, external funds. So, you know, own method taking funds collect once you obtain the funds, you have to deploy these funds. You have to deploy these funds in business activities efficiently, productively. That is what you mean by investing funds. අන්න එතනට කියන පුතා මොනවා කරනවා කියලා fund එක invest කරා කියලා. ඒතර ඔයා මේවා use කරන්න. You have to utilize these funds. Once you get these funds, you have to utilize for productive activities or efficient activities or efficient business activities. That is what you mean by investing funds. Investing funds. Investing funds. Yes, Abhilamu. Deploying the funds. Deploying the funds. Deploying the funds slash utilizing the funds. Deploying the funds slash utilizing the funds on assets. On assets. Deploying or utilizing the funds on assets. on assets inside the business or outside the business, inside the business or outside the business, or within the business or outside the business. That is also way. Within the business or outside the business. Within the business or outside the business is known as investing. Is known as investing. Shall I tell the full paragraph again? කොහොමද අපි ලිව්වේ පුතා deploying. පුතා deploying වෙනකොට instead of deploying you can say employing also. Almost the same. අර employing කියන word එක ඉතින් අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් just we are using for the employees නේ. Then deploying කියන word එකත් use කරා. Deploying or employing both the words are correct. Or utilizing funds on assets within the business or outside the business, or within or outside the business is known as investing. Is known as investing, right? From a new line, the decisions made regarding these investments, the decisions made regarding these investments, decisions made regarding these investments are known as investment decisions, are known as investment decisions, are known as investment decisions, which can be two types, which can be two types. එතකොට පුතා ඕවා ගැන ඔයා ඩිසයිඩ් කරනකොට අපි කියන්නේ මොකක් කියලාද? investment decisions කියලා කියනවා. Clear? ඒවා තමයි types කියක් තියෙනවා. There are two kinds of investment decisions, right? Okay, the right. So we can classify these investment decisions as follows. Investment decisions. ළම types කීයක් තියෙනවා කියලා දැන් ලිව්වද? Two types නේ. Right, what they are? Long-term investment decisions and short-term investment decisions. Very simple. Long-term investment decisions, short-term investment decisions. Issues. Now you know what you mean by investment. Then an idea එකක් තියෙනවා investment කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Once you collect the funds, you have to decide whether you are going to invest on this asset, or this asset. Clear? Clear? That is what you mean by investment decision. So it can be sometimes long-term investment decisions or short-term investment decisions. Long-term investment decisions means what? The long-term investment decision can be, yes, when you are investing on diversifying the business, diversifying the business, diversifying the business, or modernizing the business, modernizing the business, diversifying the business, modernizing the business, modernizing the business, diversifying the business and modernizing the business. ඒවා තමයි long term decisions. Why? And diversifying means what? Example එකක්. Let's say you are just selling textiles only. Now you will feel it's better to start a cafe inside my business as well, so the customers can have a snack. Clear? Under diversify. Modernizing, yes. You know now you are just in your business, you are just having the fans only, fan දාලා තියෙන්නේ. You think yes, better to have the full building air condition. And modernizing. Clear? So that if you are investing or if you are using your funds for that kind of activities, those are what? Long term. පුතා AC හයි කරොත් ඒක දවසයි දෙකයි තියෙන ඉතින් ඉවර වෙනවද නෑ. You can use it for long period of time. Clear? cafeteria එකක් open කරොත් ළමයි ඒක isn't that is it just giving you the benefits only for 1 month? No, it will give you more months. Clear? Now diversify, modernizing business, all these are long term investments. At the same time, Buddha, fixed assets or non-current assets purchase, fixed assets or non-current asset purchase. If you are buying a building, so it will be a good it will be a long term. Establishment of business, establishment establishment of business. All these things can be known as what? Establishment of business. All these things can be known as long term investment decisions. Clear? Understood? Right. ඒ වගේ long term යන වැඩවලට පුතා ඔයා fund එක use කරනවා නම් අන්න එතන මොනවද? ඒවා long term investments. Short term investments කියන්නේ මොනවද පුතා? Let's say if you are just buying or if you are keeping them as cash. සල්ලි අරගෙන සල්ලි විදිහම තියා ගන්නවා. To for your day to day things. That is what you call cash. Then trade debtors. So you are investing on trade debtors. You are investing on stocks. You are investing on short-term investments. Short-term investment එකක් දැම්මොත් 3 months 6 months වගේ ඒවා treasury bills වල වගේ. So those are short-term investments. Clearද? එහෙනම් ඔයාට funds ගත්තට පස්සේ long-term investments කරන්නත් පුළුවන්, short-term investments කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. Clear නේද? එහෙනම් fund requirement එකක් තිබුණා. Fund requirement එකේ types දෙකයි ළමයි මොනවද? long-term fund requirement එකයි short-term fund requirement එකයි. ඊට පස්සේ අපි කතා කරා ඒක fulfill කරන්න පුළුවන් different sources ටික මොනවද කියලා. ඒ sources වලින් ළමයි ඔයා funds එකතු කරගත්තට පස්සේ ඔයාට investment එකක් කරන්න වෙනවා. Investment එක you can do a short term investment as well as a long term investment. Managing everything about these is what you call as ඔය විදිහට source fund requirement එක identify කරගන්නවා, fulfill කරගන්නවා, ඊට පස්සේ invest කරනවා. Entire process is what you call as financial management. That is what we discussed as of now. Understood? එහෙනම් මේක අඳ ගන්නවා ටක් ගාලා ඉච්චරයි. ටක් ගාලා ඉච්චරයි. මෙතනින් ඉවරයි. තා පොඩි එකක් තියෙනවා ඒක යාලා කතා කරපු ගමන් වැඩි ඉවරයි. ඒක පොයින්ට් එකක් එක්සෑම් එක අහන්න පුළුවන් ක්වෙස්චන් එකක් ටක් ගාලා ඒක කතා කරමු ඉවරයි. එහෙනම් ෆන්ඩ් ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් එකේ පුතා මීට වඩා නැහැ. ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? ඒක ක්ලාසිෆිකේෂන්. That's all. You have to learn as per your syllabus. Right. Topic එකක් ලියාගෙන ආවේ additional topic එකක්. දැන් අපි requirement එක fulfill කරන එක කතා කරා, requirement එක fulfilling කතා කරා, investment කතා කරා. පොඩ්ඩක් තමයි කතා කරමු. requirement එක fulfill කරනකොට what are the things you have to consider? ඔක අහන්න පුළුවන් question එකක්. එහෙනම් let's have a small topic. Factors to be considered, factors to be considered when factors to be considered when fulfilling the fund requirements. Fulfilling the fund requirements. Factors to be considered when fulfilling the fund requirements. තමයි fund requirement එක fulfill කරද්දී මොනවද consider කරන්න factors? Yes, first thing is what? Yes, cost එක හිතන්න ඕනේ නේ. Cost. එහෙනම් first one ලියන්න cost. Bracket එක ඇතුලේ ලියන්න interest or any return, return to pay. දැන් ඔයා බැංක් ලෝන් එකකින් ෆුල්ෆිල් කරගන්නවාද ෂෙයාර්ස් ඉෂුව කරලා ෆුල්ෆිල් කරගන්නවාද කියන එක ඩිසයිඩ් කරද්දී ඔයා cost එක බලන්න පුළුවන්. cost based on the cost. Then amount required, amount required. ඔයාට කොච්චරක් සල්ලි ඕනේද? දැන් ගෙදරින් වර මං කිව්වේ ගෙදරින් සල්ලි ගන්නවාද බැංකෙන් ගන්නවද කියන එක ඩිසයිඩ් කරන්න වෙන්නේ ඔයාලට කොච්චරක් පොඩි ගාණක් නම් ගෙදරින් ඉල්ල ගන්න පුළුවන් නේ. ඉන්ටර්නල් සෝසස් වලට යන්න පුළුවන්. But if you want to have a huge amount, then you have to go for external. Required amount. Then required time period. Required period. Topic එක තමයි ළමයි මේ අපි ලිව්වේ factors to be considered when deciding fund requirements නේ එහෙම නේද ලිව්වේ yes student is asking ඕක recording එක බලන්න පුළුවන් පුතා ඒක පොඩ්ඩක් rewind කරලා බලන්න නැත්නම් the same thing I told factors to be considered when deciding fund requirements. Then types of securities. Types of securities. To be pledged. Collaterals කියන්නේ තෝටම තමයි පුතා. Type of securities to be pledged. Those are what you call as the collaterals. Collaterals. Types of securities to be pledged. කොච්චරක් කියද සමහර ඒවා ගන්න ගිහපුවම තමයි වාගේ කියනවා වාගේ asset එකක් ඕනේ. සමහර වෙලාවට asset එකක් pledge කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ කියනවානේ. So depend on that you can decide. Then impact to the business and management. Funding source එක decide කරනකොට පුතා මේකත් හිතන්න ඕනේ. නේ? What? Impact to the business and the management. Let's say if you are issuing shares and collecting funds, then that will impact to the equity of the business and that will also impact the management. But if you are without issuing shares, if you are going to take a bank loan, then that's fine. Bank loan එකක් ගන්න අවුලක් නැහැ. Then it will not have any impact on what? The equity and the equity එකට management එකට impact එකක් නැහැ. Clear? Right. One more thing තව එකක් ලියමු. Nature of the business and business organization. 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 Clear? These are the factors you have to consider when you are deciding your fund requirement. පුතා උතනටම ඔය අපි topic එක ලියුවා නේද? Factors to be considered when deciding fund requirement කියලා. ඔකට slash එකක් දාලා මෙහෙමත් ලියන්න. Factors to be considered when selecting appropriate fund source. දෙකටම මේ answer එක ලියන්න පුළුවන්. Clear නේද? factors to be considered when selecting appropriate fund source. For both the questions you can write the same answers. Clear නේද? උඩටම ළමයි ඔන්න clear වෙන්න අපි වැඩ ටික කරා. ඔයා අහනවා exam වල ඔය දෙකටම එකම answer එක ලියන්න පුළුවන්. අර topic එකේ slash එක දාලා අර විදිහට ලියන්න. Factors to be considered when selecting appropriate fund source. So it would be the same answer for factors to be considered in deciding fund requirement. Clear නේද? ඔය දෙකටම ළමයි same answer you can write. Right. Finally ළමයි ලියමු. මේ requirement පැත්තෙන් factors මොනවද කියලා කතා කරා. ඊළඟට investment කරනකොට ඔයා මොනවද හිතන්න ඕන factors කියලා කතා කරලා ඉවර කරලා දාමු. Right. Factors to be considered when taking investment decisions. Factors to be considered when taking investment decisions. Factors to be considered when taking investment decisions or when deciding investment decisions කිව්වත් that's all right. Right. මොනවද ළමයි investment එක කරනකොට ඔයා හිතන්න ඕනේ first thing is what? Return. How much of return you will get? එහෙනම් first thing is ලියන්න return on investment. Return on investment. Then also you have to think about the risk of the investment. ඔකත් decide කරන්න ඕනේ. Investment එක කරන්න යනකොට දැන් හිතන්න හොඳ return එකක් එනවා but the risk is more, so better not to do it නේ. Then the cost of the investment. Sometimes ළමයි the cost of the investment. If the cost of the investment is more than the return you are getting, better not to do that investment නේ. ආයතනක වෙහෙම කියලා බස් එකක් අරගෙන පාරේ route එකක දාලා දුවන්න හදනවා. That is the investment. ඒතර ඔයාට initial cost එක යනවා බස් එක purchase කරන්න route permit එක ගන්න. අපි තුමු you have to incur around 20 million. ලක්ෂ 200කට දාන්න ඕනේ. But for 10 years if you run the bus you won't be able to cover that. And එහෙමනම් වැඩක් නැහැ නේ. So the cost of the investment you have to think. Return, risk and the cost. Very simple. Return, risk, cost. Then legal conditions. Sometimes we have to think about the legal conditions as well. Then uncertainties. You have to think about the uncertainties as well. And also when you are doing an investment, you have to think about the policies of the organization. ඔයාගේ business එකේ policy එක මොකක්ද කියලා decide කරන්න වෙනවා. Consider කරන්න වෙනවා before you making the investment decisions. Clear නේද? මෙන්න මේ questions දෙක පුතා අහන්න පුළුවන්. මම අන්තිමට ලියුව questions exams වල අහන්න පුළුවන්. Requirement එක fulfill කරද්දී what are the factors you have to consider and what are the factors you have to consider when you are doing the investment. ඔය දෙකම ළමයි අපි කතා කරා. So that's all. Clear then? Is that all right? So if you have any questions, so that is the end of our ඔන්න ළමයි financial management එකේ අපි parts තුනක් තියෙනවා කියලා කිව්වනේ. These are the parts, 3 parts we have to complete. And this part is totally completed now. So from the next session onwards, ඊළඟ session එක ළමයි we are discussing what financial analysis or the ratio analysis within 3-4 hours, within maximum 3 hours පුතා මේකට යන්නේ session එක අපි discuss කරනවා one session වලින් මේක ඉවර කරනවා ඊළඟ session එකේදී. Clear ළමයි? So මෙන්න මේක පොඩ්ඩක් විතර ළමයි area එක වැඩි. So we have completed this area now. Thereafter financial system, most of the things you have learned. The financial system එකේ තියෙනවා about central bank and the commercial banks, financial institutes you have learned. We have to just recall your memories and continue. Clear ළමයි? ඒතර major part එකක් වාගේ ඉවරයි. financial management again. So we will continue with the ratio analysis within our next session. Okay, right now, everyone, right, good. Is there anyone in chat? No, good luck. Yes, fine, good. So if you have any questions, let me know even by WhatsApp. Otherwise, we will wind up the session. Thank you for everyone. Good night.